Hi everyone. Today the video is going to start a little differently. First of all, thank you so much for the views and for the constant support. Keep liking and sharing so I can bring more manhwa recaps here on the channel. Today's story has romance, suspense, intense moments, and several plot twists. But it also touches on some more sensitive themes, albeit in a light and quick manner. If that bothers you, I recommend checking out the other recaps on the channel. Remember that at the end of the video, I always reveal the name of the series and up to which chapter we have reached. On a very cold day in the middle of the forest, we see a woman with red hair, walking through all that snow with a small suitcase in her hands. Initially, she was traveling on horseback, but unfortunately, after a few hours of riding, the horse stopped and refused to move. She tried to make it walk, but her insistence ended up causing the horse to run away, leaving her alone and having to walk on foot through all that snow. The wind starts to blow more intensely, but it is at this moment that she notices something. A mansion in front of her. It seems she has finally arrived at her destination. As she approaches, she notices that in one of the windows, a human silhouette is watching her. Believing that the silhouette belongs to the man she was waiting for, she enters the mansion, carefully observing her surroundings, until she hears someone calling her name. "Lysithea?" says the muscular man with black hair and yellow eyes like a cat as he descends the stairs watching her. She feels apprehensive about his approach, as apparently the agreement was that when she meets the one she was waiting for, they should greet each other using their full names. Extremely perceptive, the man approaches her and then calls her by her full name. "Lysithea Helenaire del Arman?" "Taran," replies Lysithea, still a bit apprehensive. Upon hearing her response, the man gives a small victorious smile. "It's me. I'm glad you managed to get here safe and sound, Lysithea." Lysithea doesn't respond, just silently observes the man, thinking about how difficult the journey to get here was, and that it's still a bit early to rejoice in her arrival. After all, despite her journey being almost at an end, it has not yet been completed. While he carries her things to accommodate her, our protagonist tells us that Taran is the final broker in her plan to defect. She notices that he is taking her to the last room on the second floor, exactly the room she saw him near the window before entering the mansion. She should have used the horse that the last broker gave her, and considering her current state, he doesn't believe she fell off the horse. Lysithea explains that she tried to bring it along when it stopped walking, but it refused to come and ended up running away. Taran then says it must have been because the horse sensed them. "Them?" Lysithea asks, confused. "The wolves. Your horse must have sensed their presence." "From the nearby wolf pack," Taran replies. Our protagonist is startled to hear this, incredulous that she passed close to a wolf den without knowing. But Taran says it probably wasn't a den. However, there is a significant number of creatures in this region. Trembling in a mix of panic and anger, she realizes she could have died on the way here. "You were lucky. Is that how you managed to survive until now, isn't it?" says Taran, looking at Lysithea with a strange glint in his eyes. "Your luck wasn't just today. You were also lucky 2 months ago, weren't you?" Lysithea interrupts Taran, offended that he is making light of her situation. After all, she worked hard to survive, crossing the snowy plains to reach the mansion, and she also had to struggle a lot to escape the capital. Taran shrugs, sarcastically saying he's sure she worked hard and therefore deserves congratulations. That makes our protagonist even more irritated. She knows that brokers are not 100% reliable, but Taran could have warned her about the danger of the wolves. Finally, they arrive at the room where Lysithea will stay. She complains that the room is practically the size of a closet and asks if there isn't a slightly larger room she could stay in. Taran just says that all the rooms are basically the same size, and if she wants more space, she can sleep on the couch in the banquet hall. Lysithea ignores Taran's sarcastic comment and walks to the window, closing the curtains. Taran questions if she likes being in the dark, and Lysithea just says it's not that. She is fleeing and cannot risk being seen. He walks close to her, positioning himself right behind her and opening a little of the curtain she just closed, saying that even being a fugitive, if it were him, he would leave the curtain open a small crack. Basically between Taran's arms and with her back against his chest, Lysithea asks why leave a crack. "Because you won't be able to see your enemies in the dark." Taran replies with a small smile on his face. Bringing his mouth closer to her ear, he says, almost whispering, "You won't be able to escape anyway." Trying not to show fear, Lysithea asks what he meant by that. Exactly what it sounds like. "You know, I heard a very interesting story 3 days ago, but since it's very long, I'll let you get comfortable and tell you later," Taran says as he starts to leave the room. Lysithea asks him to wait and tell her what it is, because if it's important, she needs to know. He turns around with a grim expression and says that there is a ghost in that mansion. A chilling shiver runs down Lysithia's spine, making her body stiffen, and the color seems to drain from her face upon hearing that. A ghost? What do you mean by that? She questions. Taran just smiles, ignoring the question, and tells her to get comfortable in the new room while he prepares dinner. Our protagonist gets irritated, thinking that she was unlucky to hire this broker. She feels that Taran is only making her more worried. Besides, what was that sneaky hug? Lysithia sighs, having the impression that Taran is just teasing and playing with her. In the dining room, Taran serves dinner, still referring to Lysithia in a subtly sarcastic manner. The food is extremely simple and little, and it seems to be a bit burnt. Lysithia looks at the food with sadness. If it were her past self, she would never eat something like that. But in the last 2 months, things have changed a lot, and the life of a fugitive has brought a cruel reality. She picks up the cutlery, preparing to eat, thinking that at the moment all she wants is to survive. And that's why she hired Taran, so she can't complain too much about the food. Before taking the first spoonful, she feels Taran's gaze upon her. Uncomfortable, she asks if he needs anything from her. As if observing a painting, Taran replies that now that he knows her up close, she really has an aura of nobility. While delicately wiping her mouth with a napkin, Lysithia explains that this is exactly the problem. Lysithia, Hilinaire del Arman, the beauty of high society, the Scarlet Maiden, whose hair shines brighter red than rubies. Even the commoners knew my nickname. I can't count the number of times I was recognized because of it, Lysithia recounts. Remembering the recent past, when she was trying to escape, and masked men were looking for her, shouting to find the woman with red hair. You could have simply renounced your noble title, Taran replies. But Lysithia says it's not that simple. With a worried look, she explains that because she is the Prince Jade's fiancée, she never imagined she would be affected by a revolt. With a slight sigh, she thinks about how she only gave her parents a headache. With a slight wicked smile, Taran initially pretends to understand her point, but then asks her how her parents and fiancé are doing today. This makes Lysithia startled and make a pained expression. With a painful expression, she remembers her family and her fiancé who were killed in the uprising. Disgusted and irritated at the same time, Lysithia asks Taran if that is some kind of interrogation. Smiling, Taran says he is curious. Why would you care? I'm nobody to you. And anyway, I'll be leaving in a few days. Lysithia replies, still very irritated. So the reason you bravely crossed the frozen plains and came here to reach the warm waters of the port after the snowy fields and thus escape the kingdom? Taran asks. Already knowing the answer, Lysithia just confirms with a nod. With a mischievous smile, Taran says that her plan has a problem. The sea. The winter has been especially intense this year, and because of that, part of the sea is freezing. He believes that no ship will be able to navigate in about 3 days. Worried by Taran's words, Lysithia says that if what he says is true, then they don't have time to be talking. She quickly stands up, anxious, saying that they have to leave for the port immediately, calmly stating that this wouldn't be possible, because thanks to her, they only have 1 horse available, and without it, she would surely get lost on the way. And if 2 used the same horse, it would cause the poor animal to die of exhaustion before reaching the port. Walking there would also be madness since it takes 3 days of riding. Clearly out of options, Lysithia asks if they couldn't look for another mount, perhaps at a nearby inn. While eating, Taran explains that the nearest inn is 2 days away for a round trip, and it would take an additional 3 days to reach the port, totaling 5 days of travel. Certainly, in 5 days, she won't be able to board any ship, but if she really wants to, maybe she can walk on ice. But infiltrating a ship will definitely not be an option. Lysithia clenches her fist under the table, refusing to believe what she is hearing. After everything she went through to get there? Furious, she yells at Taran, arguing with him for not warning her about this earlier. Maybe she could have gone after her horse if she had known sooner. Eating, completely full and carefree, Taran says that in the middle of the blizzard, it would have been impossible for her to go after her horse. Besides, she also put him in a complicated situation, especially since he hasn't even told her the worst news yet. Leaning sadly on the table, Lysithia asks, what could be worse than the sea freezing? And, did they decide to interrupt the cleaning mission? Lysithia questions, not understanding how what Taran just said could be worse than the frozen sea, eliminating one of the safest escape routes for her. Taran continues speaking, now in a more serious tone. On the contrary, those ahead of the revolt proposed a more effective method to continue the cleaning and hired a specialist in hunting nobles. Phantom is now in the direct service of the leaders of the revolution. Hearing Taran's words, a chill runs down Lysithia's spine and panic overwhelms her. Phantom is known as the best and most famous assassin in the kingdom. Lysithia recalls a moment from the past when a man commented to her how good and brutal Phantom's work was, as he had hired his services asking only for a finger of the victim as proof. and Phantom delivered the finger with a ring attached to it, inside a leather box. The memory of that, mixed with the dread of thinking that that ruthless assassin might be after her, makes Lysithea feel nauseous. As she tries not to vomit, Taran sarcastically asks if she is no longer hungry. Trembling in fear, Lysithea confirms that she has lost her appetite. Upset, Taran says that this is the saddest thing a cook can hear, and that this story about Phantom is just a rumor. Still trying to process everything, Lysithea asks for permission and gets up, saying she will go to her room. With a judging look, Taran tells her to do as she wishes, but that he will not wake up in the middle of the night to serve her a snack if she gets hungry again. Slightly irritated, she says he can rest assured because she won't make any such request of him. As she starts to leave, Taran remembers to inform her that he is in the room next to hers. This leaves our protagonist surprised. She freezes, and silence dominates the environment for a few seconds. Seeing Lysithea's surprise, Taran says this is for her safety. After all, if the assassin happens to show up, he can protect her. Lysithea sarcastically comments that she had no idea how kind and concerned he was. He approaches her, saying that putting the jokes aside, the night should be calm as long as she behaves properly. Completely changing his expression and even posture, Taran lets out a relaxed laugh, saying he just hopes she doesn't wake him up after all. It's been a while since he had a good night's sleep, and Lysithea assures him that she will not wake him. Lysithea observes Taran more closely, noticing that he has a good physique, so good that she believes he probably received some kind of training before. She realizes that she would feel safe with someone like him protecting her, but at the same time, if he were her enemy, she would be in great danger. Lysithea steps back a little from Taran and asks him if he has a map to lend her. Taran says she can take a map that is over there on one of the tables. Thinking about survival, she knows that if the port is frozen, she needs to try to chart a new escape route. She notices that in the corner of the map there are some red stains. Lysithea wonders how those stains got there. Could they be from wine or maybe blood stains? Shaking her head negatively, Lysithea pushes that idea out of her mind, telling herself that he probably stained the map while cooking. She rolls up the map and heads to her room, with Taran following her, asking if she is sure she doesn't want to hear about the ghost that lives in that mansion. Lysithea denies, certain that Taran is just saying this to make fun of her. The scene cuts to Lysithea sleeping in her room while murmurs and moans mix with the sound of wood cracking in the fireplace. The murmurs turn into screams, causing our protagonist to wake up confused. She wonders what those noises are. Perhaps the sound of the wind? No, it sounds more like someone lamenting. Maybe someone else is in the mansion. Remembering Taran's words earlier, she feels a bit scared. Was he serious? And are those sounds from the ghost? Lysithea decides to check. Still scared, she puts half of her body outside the room. Why? This is a terrible idea, my dear protagonist. Never go check the noise. Especially not alone. She sees the dark corridor illuminated only by the moonlight, but the lamenting screams continue echoing through the walls of that mansion. Lysithea becomes frightened upon realizing that there is no one in the corridor despite the screams continuing. She hurriedly goes to Taran's room door and, with a trembling voice, asks if he has a minute. Not hearing any response, she knocks on the door and then tries to enter the room but realizes that the door is locked. She then remembers Taran mentioning that he didn't want her to wake him and believes he must have locked the door so she wouldn't disturb him. Still scared, Lysithea returns to her room quickly and hides under the covers. But even under the covers and covering her ears with her hands, she can still hear the screams and laments. The night goes on and the screams continue, making Lysithea sure that there is someone else in that mansion besides her and Taran. Our protagonist tries to sleep, but the incessant laments wake her up every time. The next morning, Lysithea is exhausted from the restless night. Taran, who is serving breakfast, also notices how tired Lysithea looks. She asks him if, by any chance, there is anyone else in the mansion besides the two of them. Maybe another fugitive? Seeming a bit offended by the question, Taran assures Lysithea that only the two of them are in the mansion. After all, a good broker needs to be discreet. Quickly changing his expression to a wide smile, Taran says that maybe she has seen or heard the ghost. He concludes, approaching Lysithea. She scolds him, stating that ghosts do not exist and that he should stop being ridiculous. Shrugging, Taran asserts that the chance of there being a ghost in that mansion is very high since the place belonged to a drug dealer. He continues explaining that 100 years ago, this mansion belonged to a dealer named Kingpin, and he used to throw night parties in the mansion until one day he met his end at the hands of someone who held a grudge against him. After that, the place was abandoned. And that was the story I wanted to tell you last night, Taran concludes, hands on his hips and smiling. Lysithea does not seem very happy or impressed with Taran's story. Chuckling, Taran says that the point he wants to make is that, with so many dark stories in the history of that mansion, it wouldn't be strange if there were 1 or 2 ghosts trapped there. Skeptical, Lysithea replies that it would make sense if ghosts existed. Taran crosses his arms confidently, proposing that they make a bet. "Aren't we too old for this kind of game?" questions Lysithea. With his eyes shining with excitement, Taran suggests that they bet his payment. The suggestion makes Lysithea jump. "That's right, you heard me. I claim there is a ghost in this mansion, and if there isn't, I won't charge you for helping you escape," says Taran. Intrigued, Lysithea asks if he is addicted to gambling to want to risk all the money he is going to earn. Our protagonist, with a bored expression, asks him what he would gain if there really was a ghost and he won the bet. Simple. "You would pay me what you owe and still give me an extra bonus." Innocently, Lysithea replies that the agreed amount is all she has. She becomes suspicious, saying that it is very strange for him to risk losing such a large sum of money. Noticing her suspicion, Taran reassures her, saying that this is just to make things less boring since they are stuck there because of the snowstorm outside. Lysithea thinks for a moment and agrees with Taran, confident that she won't lose since ghosts do not exist. Taran extends his hand towards Lysithea to formalize the bet, saying that from now on, until the moment they leave the mansion, it will be valid. She stretches out her hand to shake his but hesitates for a moment, but he quickly grabs her hand and shakes it. Lysithea is impressed by his strength. This makes her feel slightly embarrassed and thoughtful. That night, once again, screams and moans echo through the mansion. Trembling in bed, Lysithea cannot believe that those moans are from a ghost and convinces herself that it must all be a plan by Taran to win the bet. Fed up with this nonsense, she gets up determined to put an end to it, but a loud sound of something hitting reverberates for a few seconds. And soon after, the moans and screams stop, and she begins to hear the sound of footsteps. Again, she gets up to check. She presses her ear against the still-closed door of her room, and the sound of footsteps grows louder. A shiver runs through Lysithea at the thought that it could be the phantom. She rushes to her bag and starts searching for something, until she pulls out a small pistol from within it, trembling with fear. But with the pistol in hand, she goes back to the door. The sounds of footsteps disappear, and she hears the sound of the door to the next room opening. Quickly, she leaves her room and heads into the hallway, aiming the gun in the direction of where the sound is coming from, coming face to face with Taran, holding a lantern. She is surprised to see him. He is also surprised, but soon starts laughing at her face, asking what she is doing and how she got the revolver. Embarrassed, she explains that she thought he was an intruder. Taran says he was returning to his room after patrolling the mansion. Noticing that she is on the verge of a breakdown, Taran asks if the fear of being pursued is what keeps her awake. With her cheeks still red from embarrassment, she says it is important to be careful, especially for someone in her situation. Taran remains silent for a moment. He takes the revolver from her hand, and while unloading the revolver, he asks her not to run out like that the next time she thinks there is an intruder. He explains that the way she acted was dangerous and not very smart, as it left her exposed and vulnerable. The ideal would be to wait near the door for the intruder to enter and then ambush him. Pulling the revolver from Taran's hand, she explains that she acted that way because she thought the intruder was going to attack him. Lysithea is offended by his comment and walks away towards her room, apologizing for getting involved where she wasn't called. But he grabs her arm, making her stop for a moment. In a serious tone, he asks if she is afraid of the phantom. Without hesitating, she confirms that yes, she is afraid. Approaching her, Taran suggests that if that is the case, she can stay in the room with him. Surprised by Taran's invitation, she remembers the past of the men who had hit on her. They all always had the same look, a look filled with unspeakable desires. But she feels that Taran's look is different, which leads her to question what he really wants from her. Even so, she does not let herself be carried away by curiosity. After rejecting his invitation, she quickly turns and returns to her room. Lysithea closes the door behind her as she enters her room and is surprised when she hears Taran's footsteps fading away. The fact that he gave up so easily makes her think that maybe he really just wanted to keep her company, with no ulterior motives behind the invitation. Still, our protagonist is sure she made the right decision by rejecting his invitation. She lies down on her bed trying to fall back asleep. The blizzard outside makes it so that, even with the windows closed, the cold wind blows through the room, causing Lysithea to shiver. This makes her think for a moment that if she had accepted his invitation, she could have used his body as a barrier against the wind. Perhaps it was just loneliness or neediness speaking, but overwhelmed by these feelings, Lysithea ends up falling asleep. The next day after lunch, Lysithea, still irritated by what happened the night before and determined to find answers on her own, instead of trusting a coward who locked his door, sets out to explore the mansion. She climbs the stairs towards the third floor, remembering that, besides telling her to make herself at home, Taran also mentioned that the third floor was particularly interesting. Thoughtful, she concludes that Taran is neither arrogant nor rude, but he also cannot be described as friendly. At first, he acted very friendly, like an open book, but she is sure he is hiding something from her. Upon reaching the third floor, the majesty of the place pulls Lysithea out of her thoughts about Taran. Observing every detail, she thinks that this place, at its peak, would have been as grand as her own family in their times of glory. The third floor has several rooms, and Lysithea explores various halls, until, in one located on the west side of the corridor, she finds a small library. Accidentally, she bumps into something and a book falls to the floor. Curious, she picks it up. While reading, she realizes it is a book about medicinal herbs. Lysithea decides to keep it to read when she is bored. With the book in hand, she continues exploring the floor until she finds a room located on the east side of the corridor. Upon opening the door, Lysithea is startled to see her own reflection shattered in dozens of broken mirrors. The shock makes her stumble as she wonders why on earth anyone would keep an entire room filled with broken mirrors. With a bad feeling about that room, she quickly steps away from there, heading towards the last room in the east corridor. And what she finds in the last room turns out to be even more disturbing than what she saw in the previous one. No matter how much she had heard about the peculiar tastes of some nobles, she never imagined she would find a torture chamber. While making a mental note to never return to that place, a loud noise of something scratching breaks the silence, leaving her anxious and immediately on alert. She looks at the floor in panic, questioning whether the noise really came from that direction. Only when something scratches right beneath her foot, through the floor, does terror completely overwhelm her. Without thinking twice, she runs desperately out of that room, as if her life depended on it. Taran, who is passing through the second floor, sees Lysithea rushing down the stairs. Upon spotting him, she feels an immediate relief and calls out his name, practically throwing herself into his arms. Not understanding much, but with a clearly worried expression, he envelops her in a protective hug. He tries to calm her and asks her to explain what is happening. With tears in her eyes, she says she is sure there is someone else in the mansion. She recounts that she heard scratching sounds coming from beneath the floor of the third floor. With a serious and calm look, he tries to reassure her, stating that only he and she are living in the mansion. But what she witnessed seemed too real, and she insists that there is someone else there. In a slightly sarcastic tone, Taran comments that, in that case, it must be the ghost. Lysithea gets irritated and, raising her voice, asserts that the noises were clearly human. Taran insists that she is just hearing things, suggesting that it might just be the wind outside. After all, they say that during snowstorms, the sound of the wind can resemble the lament of women. But it wasn't the wind, says Lysithea, a bit calmer. Shaking his head negatively, Taran states that during his rounds, the mansion is always very quiet, and that he never hears screams or laments. Lysithea bites her lower lip, thoughtful, still unable to believe that everything she heard and felt isn't real. Taran approaches her, placing his hand on her forehead as if checking for a fever, while asking if she is okay. Convinced of what she experienced, Lysithea pushes Taran away from her. She turns and starts to run, while the concerned Taran follows her, asking what is happening. All she responds is for him to leave her alone. Lysithea enters her room and closes the door behind her. Lying on the bed, trembling, she wonders why he doesn't hear the screams and laments at night. Am I going crazy? Maybe all of this is a dream, thinks Lysithea. A deep voice of a man says, "If you want to live, behave and do as you are told, Lady Lysithea." The scene cuts to a man approaching Lysithea in an oppressive manner, invading her space. She recoils, pushing him firmly and ordering him to step back. But the man pulls out a knife and orders her to behave. He breathes heavily as she stops resisting for a moment, making a sarcastic comment about her being a lady of high society. "Look at what you've become. Remember, this is the power of the revolution," says the man coldly as Lysithea's eyes fill with tears. Feeling victorious, the man leans towards her. Soon after, a bang echoes through the room, followed by the sound of something falling onto the bed. Lysithea's heavy breathing mixes with her own sobs, and her trembling hand, now stained with red, holds a revolver. In an act of desperation, determined to survive, Lysithea shot the man who wanted to harm her. Realizing what she just did, she gets up and goes to the door. Then she flees. Desperate, in the middle of the night. After running for a while, she stops, exhausted, and then hears footsteps approaching. Phantom, she thinks, worried. The possibility of him being behind her makes her panic even more, and she starts running again. She then spots the mansion. Entering, Lysithea runs to Taran's room, where she desperately knocks on the door, pleading for him to open it. the image of a male figure in one of the mansion's windows, the same one she saw on the day she arrived. A bizarre version of Taran grins grotesquely at her, saying it seems the phantom has finally found her. Frightened, she begs him to help her. "This is your destiny," murmurs the figure as its form distorts until it becomes the real Taran, with a wide and almost unreal smile spreading across his face. Taran then turns away from her. Tearfully, she desperately pleads for him not to leave. Sitting on the floor, leaning against Taran's door while the cold snow falls around her, Lysithea keeps her gaze down, empty and sad, assuming that Taran will not save her. The sound of water echoes in her head, and the environment around her distorts as she concludes that Taran will leave her there to die. This thought makes her suddenly open her eyes, pulling Lysithea back to reality. Had it all been a dream? Gasping and trembling from the cold with her body soaked in sweat, she realizes that it was all just a nightmare. She gets up and walks to the fireplace, seeking warmth. Despite the heat of the fire, her clothes are drenched in sweat, so she decides to take them off. As she warms herself, she scans the room, observing everything around her. She sees a small basin with a bit of water and a face towel, wondering if Taran had been in her room while she slept. "I wonder if he saw me crying because of my nightmare," murmurs Lysithea, hugging her legs, thoughtful, near the fireplace. Concluding that she shouldn't be worrying about that, she gets up and uses the basin to refresh herself, wiping the sweat from her body. Suddenly, a scream of pain echoes, putting Lysithea on alert. She runs to her room door and locks it, being sure that the sounds are human, but that doesn't make the situation any less frightening. The image of Taran inviting her to spend the night with him comes to her mind, but quickly she suppresses the urge to go to him, knowing that it wouldn't be the most appropriate behavior for a lady. Besides, she doesn't fully trust him. He is only helping because he is being paid, and as much as she wants to, she knows he is not on her side. She tries to go back to sleep. As she closes her eyes, the screams of pain make her recall everything she has been through, and the nightmares invade her mind again. Getting up, Lysithea decides that she cannot stay in that place any longer, or she will end up going mad. I even understand that she is nervous and worried, but going out in the middle of the night in a snowstorm when there are wolves outside seems like a terrible idea. Wait until dawn, woman. But as she tries to put the saddle on the horse, it whinnies, irritated, and pushes her away. Realizing that the horse is too risky to control, she decides to go on foot. After all, falling off the horse while trying to ride would be much more dangerous than facing the snowstorm on foot. Looking at the map, she charts a route to the nearest inn, where she can rent a mount and ride to the port. Although it is a difficult journey, if she can save money by not having to pay a middleman and still have a peaceful night's sleep at the inn, it will be worth it, concludes Lysithea. She walks for a long time, traversing the frozen plains. Distracted for a moment, Lysithea ends up tripping over a stone. As she falls, she knocks over the lantern she was carrying, spilling all the oil that kept the flame lit. Worried, she looks up at the sky, wondering when dawn will come. She brushes the snow off her clothes while looking around, hoping she is close to the inn since she has been walking for quite a while. In the midst of the snowstorm, she spots two yellow dots approaching. As the dots get closer, she realizes that they are actually eyes. The eyes of a wild and hungry wolf. Upon realizing that the wolf is coming in her direction, she starts to run in the opposite direction. But the wolf bites hard at the hem of her dress, causing her to lose her balance and fall. The wolf begins to drag her, biting the dress while growling fiercely. Lysithea stares at the creature and, terrified, screams for help. Suddenly, a shot echoes across the plains, and the wolf is hit squarely. After that, the wolf falls lifeless to the ground, releasing Lysithea's dress. She breathes a sigh of relief, and, in the direction from where the shot came, sees a man approaching. Taran. Taran's gaze is intense and penetrating, with his golden eyes shining in the cold light of the snow. There is a mix of seriousness and something unfathomable in his expression. Neither clear anger nor affection, just a fixed and silent attention on Lysithea, as if he were assessing her. "Were you running away?" he asks, after a few seconds in which they both stare at each other in silence. She tries to respond, but as the adrenaline of the moment dissipates, fatigue and cold overwhelm her, causing her to faint. Taran sighs, slightly frustrated, as he picks her up in his arms and carries her away from there. He rides for a while, but the snowstorm intensifies more and more. Then he decides to take shelter in a cave. Lysithea awakens after some time, finding herself in Taran's arms, who holds her gently while, with a soft smile, asks if she slept well. Regaining a bit of calm, she asks why he is so close to her. While they are both practically naked, Taran questions whether she really doesn't know why they are in that situation, if she truly doesn't remember what happened. Lysithea's memory begins to return. She sees herself fleeing in the snowstorm, the wolf attacking her, and soon after, Taran's penetrating gaze as he saved her. Now, with the memory fresh of what happened, she starts to thank him, but suddenly she is interrupted by a sudden cough. She apologizes, breathless, but the cough does not relent. Concerned, Taran asks if she is still cold while rummaging through some nearby belongings in search of something. He hands her a canteen and firmly tells her to drink, assuring her that it will help calm the cough. Lysithea accepts the canteen and drinks without even questioning what it could be. The recent events, without her realizing it, made her feel more at ease in his presence. She grimaces at the strong taste of the alcohol. "This is liquor," she exclaims, surprised. "It helped, didn't it?" Taran asks, with a smile on his face. "My God, how can you give liquor to someone who has a cold?" she complains. Lysithea watches him as he takes a sip of the liquor, seeing the smooth movement of his neck and noticing a small drop trickle down the edge. He slowly leans in, wrapping her from behind in a firm embrace, and asks why she decided to run away, wanting to know if by throwing herself into the snowstorm she had given up on herself. She responds seriously, saying that she felt like she was going insane in the mansion. She ran away because she wanted to live. Upon hearing this, he looks at her and questions, intrigued if she really saw a ghost. She sighs, a bit frustrated that he is bringing up the ghost topic again, but explains that it wasn't because of that. It was mainly because she had a nightmare about something that happened to her. As she says this out loud, she realizes that despite everything, she feels surprisingly comfortable and safe in Taran's arms. Curious, he continues the conversation and asks if it was something that happened when she was in the capital. She confirms with a yes and turns to face Taran's face as she begins to recount what happened to her. She explains that after losing her family and fiancé to the revolution, she became a fugitive. But unfortunately, she ended up captured by the son of the revolutionary leader. Then he tried to force me to do something against my will. In exchange for keeping me alive, he wanted to keep me under his control, as if I were just a possession, for the rest of my life. An uncomfortable silence settles after Lysithea reveals her past. Taran breaks the silence, asking in a tone laden with implication. But to his surprise, Lysithea responds that no, that fortunately the son of the revolutionary leader did not get what he wanted, as she reacted and shot him when he tried to overstep. Taran is genuinely surprised to hear that Lysithea was the one who ended Bran, the son of the revolutionary leader. When she confirms that it was indeed her, he can't help but start laughing loudly, which leads Lysithea to ask if he doesn't believe what she said. With tears in his eyes from laughing so much, he asserts that he believes her, but admits that discovering that it was her doing is truly unexpected. Not understanding, she asks, "Why not? After all, didn't people already know she was the culprit?" Taran, still laughing a bit, replies that of course not. When they found Bran, everyone assumed it was the work of a professional assassin. Looking serious but with a hint of tenderness, Taran tells her not to label herself as guilty since she acted in self-defense. Pulling her closer in an embrace, he asserts that no one would judge her for that, as she did what was necessary to escape and survive. Taran's words and touch positively surprise Lysithea, making her feel welcomed and safe. Even so, she can't help but ask why he is being so kind to her. Taran, with a slight smile and trying to maintain an indifferent air, replies that he just thought it was better to change tactics. After all, he doesn't want all the effort he put into that contract to go to waste. "Why didn't you come to me, Lysithea?" Taran asks, with a thoughtful look and a slightly upset tone. "I left the door unlocked. It surely would have been less dangerous to come to my room than to face the blizzard and a plain full of wolves." She remains silent, as she knows very well the reason she didn't go to him. She didn't want to show herself completely vulnerable. If he saw her trembling with fear, she was sure he would start to underestimate her. But that wasn't the main reason. Worse than being underestimated was imagining that he could turn his back on her, just like in her nightmare. Avoiding his gaze, Lysithea replies, "I didn't go because I was afraid you wouldn't help me, even if I were between life and death." Surprised, Taran asks why she thought that of him. She explains that it's because she knows their relationship is only that of contractor and contracted. Even if she died, he would still get the money. That's why she believed he wouldn't have any reason to help her. Looking intently at her with a serious expression, he asks, "Did I leave you to die? If I were only concerned about the money, do you really think I would have risked following you in the middle of a blizzard and facing wolves to save you? Not to mention stopping in this cave to ensure you were safe and warm? Is that the kind of person you think I am?" Taran questions, slightly offended. "Someone who would abandon you and run off with your money and precious belongings?" In defense of our protagonist, his sarcastic tone when they first met didn't exactly convey a sense of trust, much less the image of a saving soul. "Be honest, Lysithea. What do you want from me?" he asks, staring at her intensely. Embarrassed and not knowing what to say, she ends up letting slip what her heart longs for at that moment, that you stay with me. Upon hearing her request, Taran lets out a slight victorious smile. He moves closer to her again, cuddling her and pressing his body against hers. With a firm voice, he says, I will stay by your side, so please don't run away again. I almost went crazy when I didn't find you in your room. He confesses, his voice heavy with emotion. I'm sorry, murmurs Lysithea, a bit confused by Taran's tenderness in his response. Realizing that he had been checking on her regularly at the mansion and even risked himself to save her in the middle of the blizzard, with a slightly playful yet still tender tone, he assures her that he will come up with a plan to drive those nightmares from her mind, so that what happened today doesn't repeat itself and she can feel more at ease. Embarrassed, she states that she won't run away again, but admits that she can't guarantee the nightmares won't return. He looks at her with a slightly seductive tone and asks if she wants him to help her forget those bad memories. Intrigued, Lysithea questions how he would do that. Like this, he murmurs as he slowly leans in and places a delicate kiss on her neck, making her blush. He continues to softly kiss her neck and shoulder, causing her to shiver between surprise and embarrassment. With her face flushed and already imagining the answer, she asks hesitantly, when you talk about creating new memories, do you mean? Taran smirks with a look full of mischief and confidence and responds teasingly, am I not being clear enough? Tell me if you want me to stop, he says, his voice low and firm as he leans over her, keeping his gaze fixed on her face. I will respect you if that's not what you want. With a relaxed smile, he comments, trying to ease the tension, it's just that I would hate to get shot. She looks at him, surprised by the response, but can't ignore her own heart, which beats faster with every second he stays so close. He watches her in silence while she, hesitant, thinks about whether she should reject his approach. At the same time, she can't deny that she feels comfortable and safe by his side and that his touch is pleasant. Not noticing any negative reaction from Lysithea, Taran slowly leans in her direction and then pulls her closer, joining his lips to hers in an intense kiss. Their lips remain joined for long moments, the world around seeming to disappear. At first, the kiss is firm, but soon deepens, filled with an intensity that makes Lysithea's heart race. With each touch, each exchanged sigh, she feels even more drawn to him, consumed by a silent desire for him to continue. As they catch their breath, Lysithea can't help but ask if he had any ulterior motives for doing that. Taran simply leans in again to kiss her, and with a firm look, replies that he just wants to make her nightmares disappear. Confidently, he adds that, besides that, if she no longer has nightmares, she won't have any reason to run away, and that perhaps the real danger is her ending up dreaming of him and not wanting to wake up. His words leave our protagonist momentarily bewildered. Looking at him, she wonders where such confidence comes from, intrigued by the assurance he exudes with every word and gesture. But as she analyzes his face and stature, she blushes upon realizing that someone as attractive as him has every right to be so confident. She continues to gaze at him, blushing and completely mesmerized. Noticing the way she looks at him, he slightly furrows his brow as if he has made a discovery, and asks curiously, wait a minute, is it your first time? With flushed cheeks, she admits with a shy nod that it is. Taran's expression changes for a moment, revealing genuine concern. Before he can say anything, Lysithea lightly touches his arm, her gaze firm and serene, not showing doubt but rather a silent confirmation for him to continue. A soft and playful smile forms on his lips, and in a light tone he comments that if it's bad, she can throw something at him. That night, in the quiet of the cave warmed only by the fire and their closeness, Taran and Lysithea fully surrendered to each other, even if just for that moment. Amid whispers, kisses, and caresses, they shared something intense and unforgettable, which chased away the cold, the fears. And if anyone ever asked how intense that night was, only the horse, quietly in the corner of the cave, could tell. But luckily, it knows how to keep a secret. Despite the rapid and intense evolution of their relationship, I didn't find it bad. After all, she is in an extremely stressful situation. So, in my mind, it makes sense to give in to some impulses. Besides, he is also under pressure, especially since he is definitely hiding something. The next day, back at the mansion, Taran enters the mansion carrying Lysithea in his arms. She looks exhausted and slightly uncomfortable, but he reassures her in a calm tone, saying that she will be fine and that next time it won't hurt as much. Blushing, she asks, surprised if he is implying that there will be a next time. Who knows? He replies with a suggestive smile as he carries her toward her room. He gently places her on the bed, asking her to rest a bit, as she must be exhausted. While she lies down, he steps back, saying he will prepare dinner. But as he starts to move away, she lightly grabs his shirt and asks him to wait, saying she has a favor to ask. "Could you teach me how to use a weapon properly?" she asks, looking at him seriously. He looks at her with a serious, almost thoughtful expression before responding that this is not part of the contract they have. She insists, explaining that this would indeed be important for their contract. After all, if she knows how to protect herself better, it will make his job easier. "I'm telling you, this man is hiding something. And what would I gain in exchange for teaching you?" he questions, catching her off guard. Lysithea, quick to respond, reminds him that what happened the night before was also not part of the agreement. With a confident smile, he retorts, "That was different. It was consensual, and we both benefited." With her face slightly flushed but a hint of irritation in her voice, she asks what he wants in return, making it clear that it cannot be money. He breaks into a wide, thoughtful smile and repeats in a teasing tone, "Besides money? But to Lysithea's surprise, he simply says he wants her to cook for him. "One meal is enough, as long as it tastes good," he said casually. Still incredulous, Lysithea stared at him, repeating as if she wanted to confirm she had heard correctly. "You want me to cook for you?" Noticing the surprise on Lysithea's face, Taran raises an eyebrow, realizing that she probably didn't know how to cook. With a mix of teasing and curiosity, he asks if he will have to teach her how to cook too. Embarrassed, she looks away and admits she had never cooked before. Taran sighs, as if already anticipating the work, and decides to teach her how to cook without charging anything. Lysithea, surprised and excited by the offer, smiles and thanks him warmly. He leaves the room telling her to sleep, as he is going to prepare dinner. Upon reaching the door, he stops for a moment and, without turning around, asks her not to run away anymore. A little upset, she simply nods and replies that she will not run away anymore. She lets herself fall onto the bed, exhausted, feeling the weight of the day finally descend upon her. She ends up falling asleep, lost in thoughts about everything that happened in the last day. Muffled and soft sounds of pleasure echo through the room, breaking the serene silence that reigned there. With quickened breath, he leans down to her ear and, in a low voice filled with passion, whispers the name, Lysithea. The soft and intense sound blends with the heat of the moment. He murmurs something else very softly, close to her ear, but his words are so gentle that we cannot hear what it is. What he says makes her wrap him in a tight embrace, while she pronounces his name with a voice full of passion. While they are close, she, with a trembling voice filled with emotion, asks him to repeat those words to her. "Say that you love me." Realizing that what she desires most is to hear an "I love you" from him, she opens her eyes with a start, filled with a mix of surprise and emotion, waking from the dream she was having. The cough returns and she is seized by a fit while, mentally, she scolds herself for the thoughts she had moments ago. Convincing herself that he is only by her side because of the contract they have, she should not expect anything beyond that. A soft knock echoes at the door, followed by Taran's voice calling her for dinner. As he hears no response, he asks, still outside the room, if she is still sleeping. Inside, we see Lysithea resting peacefully, oblivious to his words. Worried, he enters the room, announcing his presence in a soft and cautious tone. "Are you okay?" he asks in a low voice. On the table, near the bed, lies a plate of food carefully prepared for her. A little breathless and looking like she has a fever, she admits in a weak voice that she is not feeling very well. Placing his hand on her forehead, he realizes that she is warm and probably has a fever. Concerned, he asks how long she has been feeling this way. She, not very sure, replies that she doesn't know for certain, but that she has been feeling a bit ill. He decides to go to the village to fetch some medicine, but she insists that he shouldn't worry, assuring him that she will be fine just resting for a few days. She weakly extends her hand, trying to make him change his mind, but he says it is important to get the medication and assures her that it will only take a day to go and come back. Even so, she insists that she will be fine. He holds her hand and asks if she realizes the danger of such a high fever, explaining that it could even leave her blind or deaf. Surprised, she asks if he has ever seen that happen to someone. With a slightly sad look, he shakes his head and says yes, adding that as soon as dawn breaks, he will go get the medicine for her. During the night, he stays by her side, making sure her fever goes down. He gives her a small ice cube to chew on, hoping that it helps her feel better. Curious, she asks how he got ice, and he explains that he left some drinking water outside, just in case he needed it. Our protagonist realizes how meticulous Taran is and ends up asking if he is always so prepared for everything. Taran says nothing. He just responds with a slight smile. She turns to him, looks him in the eyes, and calls him by name. Worried, she says that if she dies, she wants him to keep all her money. Taran gives a smile that mixes sadness and sarcasm before asking in a teasing tone. Coughing again, she comments that seeing the worried expression on his face made her start to think that what she has might be something really serious. Taran remains silent for a moment and then replies that she will be fine and that he is not worried. She smiles and comments that she doesn't believe for a second that he isn't worried. After all, he is attentive enough to frequently change the towel on her head. He does not respond immediately, just remains silent, his face partially covered by shadow, conveying a mix of seriousness and introspection. Noticing the change in Taran's expression, she begins to wonder what the true reason behind his concern for her could be. She then seems to come to a conclusion, and after a brief silence, asks Taran if, by any chance, any of his clients had ever died from a high fever. With seriousness, Taran replies that no, none of his clients died from fever. But when he was only 10 years old, a deadly fever spread through the village where he lived. He himself did not fall ill, but the disease ended up claiming his mother's life. Lysithea is surprised that Taran is opening up about something so personal. "Don't make that face," he says, noticing Lysithea's expression. "That's all in the past. A long time ago." Lysithea, with her gaze slightly tired from the fever, locks her eyes on his and asks in a low voice if he thinks that, with time, she will also be able to feel that the past is just the past. Taran maintains a serious, almost inscrutable look before firmly answering, "Yes, as long as she wasn't the cause of those deaths." Taran's answer makes Lysithea hesitate. She furrows her brow, observing him closely, and asks if that means you have ever been responsible for someone's death. The question made him thoughtful for a moment, with a distant look and a heavy expression, as if he evaluates each memory carefully before deciding what to say. This makes our protagonist question whether she had been rude and reckless in asking him that question. But before she can apologize, Taran's voice breaks the silence. "When I was 14 years old, I went hunting with some hunters from my village, and I ended up shooting an innocent person." In shock, Lysithea blinks a few times as if trying to process what she has just heard. "An innocent person? But why?" Almost like a sigh, Taran responds, low and contained. "It was an accident." "But how? There must have been a reason for that to happen." She questions, curiosity mixed with hesitation. Taran closes his eyes, his expression taken by a silent weight, as if he is reliving a painful memory. He lets out a long sigh and then begins to tell. He recounts that during a hunt, a bear cub got caught in a poorly placed trap. This enraged the mother of the animal. She charged furiously at the group, causing immediate chaos, where some hunters fled while others began shooting desperately to try to stop her. In the end, we managed to scare off the mother bear, but one of the hunters ended up dead in the process, and the reason for his death was my bullet. With a worried look, Lysithea states that this clearly wasn't his fault and, almost breathless, asks if he had been punished for it. Taran confirms with a nod, saying that at 14 he was forced to leave the village. While adjusting the cloth on Lysithea's forehead, he explains that he did everything to survive. But it wasn't easy. Because of this, he ended up growing accustomed to living alone. He gently touches her cheek and, in a low voice, says that as much as he wants to tell more, it seems that her fever is not letting up. He informs her that he really needs to go to town to buy the medicine and that this will probably take a day, but he emphasizes that she needs to take care of herself while he is away. She looks at him with a challenging gaze and demands that he promise to return as quickly as possible. Otherwise, she warns that she will run away again. He gently places his hand over Lysithea's eyes, telling her that she should sleep, and then asks if she has still been having nightmares. This makes her remember the intimate moment they shared in the cave, when he covered her eyes just like that while he loved her. Remembering this, she gently squeezes his hand against her face and, smiling while blushing, affirms that she no longer has nightmares. As she falls asleep, she, in a hopeful thought, imagines how nice it would be if they could continue talking like this when he returns. The next day, Lysithea wakes up still a bit groggy. As she rubs her eyes, she thinks that she had a dream but can't quite remember it. She turns onto her side in bed, lost in thought, and realizes that she misses Taran. Without any sense of how long she has slept, she wonders what time it must be. Suddenly, she hears a noise coming from near the window, breaking the silence of the room. She hurriedly gets up from the bed, curious and worried about what might have caused the noise. She approaches the window to check. She feels relief upon noticing that it was just a piece of ice that had fallen from the roof, hitting the ground and causing the noise. Still looking out the window, she realizes that she feels much better than the day before. The fever persists, but it is much weaker. A gentle smile appears on her face as she remembers Taran taking care of her last night. But the calm moment of our protagonist lasts little, for in the distance, she spots 3 figures approaching the mansion. She quickly hides behind the curtain upon realizing that the figures are 3 men, clearly coming toward the mansion. And worst of all, none of them is Taran. Lysithea silently leaves the room, each step measured to avoid making noise, while wondering who those men are and what they might want there. Cautiously, she approaches the part of the hallway where she can see the other floors, and from there, sees the 3 men on the ground floor talking among themselves. They seem like mercenaries or perhaps hunters. They talk about the cold outside, and one of them takes the opportunity to demand a debt from another, named Leo. Leo, visibly irritated, tells the other to stop bothering him, assuring that he will receive the money that is rightfully his. The man retorts, complaining that he deserves more. After all, he was the one who eliminated the target. Lysithea reacts upon hearing the men's conversation, her eyes widening, revealing surprise and apprehension as a drop of sweat trickles down her face. Downstairs, the man continues complaining that, besides everything, the person who escaped saw his face, which, in his view, puts him at risk. And for that reason, he believes he has the right to decide how much he should be paid for the job. Leo ignores his companion's complaints and impatiently tells him to calm down. He turns to the man rummaging through a bag, named Tommy, and tells him to look for some alcohol for them to drink. Lysithea continues listening to the conversation, clearly worried about what she is hearing. The argument quickly escalates, and the man, whom Lysithea now knows is called Clede, filled with rage, raises his weapon and points it directly at Leo, still arguing with him about the payment he considers unfair. Realizing that those men are nothing more than a group of bandits, Lysithea feels her heart race. She knows she needs to hide, and fast, before they find her. Remembering dark events from the past, Lysithea feels a chill run down her spine. The fear grows with the certainty that if those men find her, they might not be satisfied with just stealing her money. She remembers the fireplace still burning. She runs back to the room, determined to put it out before the smoke or the... But before she can finish the thought, she accidentally steps on one of the loose floorboards, which creaks loudly. In that instant, she freezes, her heart racing, fearing she has been heard. Downstairs, the men suddenly stop their conversation, falling into complete silence, alert to any sound. Tommy glances up at the floor above and, referring to Leo as boss, says he thinks there is someone else in the mansion. They then begin to observe the mansion more closely. One of them furrows his brow and comments that he smells food and burnt wood in the air. For him, this is enough proof that someone is living there. Lysithea feels a brief sense of relief upon hearing that, believing that at least they don't seem to have noticed the noise from the floorboards. She hears them agree to split up to search for whoever else might be there. Desperate, Lysithea tries to think of what would be the smartest thing to do at that moment. Going outside is out of the question. The footprints in the snow would make it easy to track her. Going to the first floor is also not an option, as they would find her much more easily there. She clenches her fist, filled with frustration, irritated that those damned bandits chose the very day Taran is not there to show up. Determined to protect herself and survive, she decides that the best course of action is to return to her room. She quickly begins to rummage through her things, looking for something that might help her. Upon finding her revolver, she remembers that she only has 3 bullets, theoretically 1 for each of the bandits. It will be difficult, but she knows she doesn't have many options at the moment. Remembering what Taran told her the last time she used a revolver, she positions herself near the door, waiting for the approach of the bandits. Anxious about the situation, she tries to calm herself, taking deep breaths as she waits for the inevitable. As difficult as it is, she is well positioned, in a strategic spot, from where she can shoot anyone who enters before they even see her. She trembles slightly, fear coursing through her body. As much as she needs to be strong, the truth is that she is terrified inside. One of the men shouts from downstairs that he is going to check the second floor. He begins to open the doors of the other rooms abruptly, making a lot of noise with each bang and shove. The sound of footsteps and doors being opened draws closer, making Lysithea increasingly nervous, her heart pounding in her chest. "I found it!" The man shouts to his companions, causing Lysithea to freeze in place. "Whoever is living here is in the second room on the second floor," he announces. Curious, their leader begins to climb the stairs to see his colleague's discovery in person. Lysithea hears the sound of them rummaging through Taran's room, right next to hers, each drawer opened and each piece of furniture dragged echoing like a portent in the silence of the hallway. I'm not sure if it's out of fear or because she is still sick, but Lysithea feels a sudden and intense urge to cough, trying to hold back the cough as much as she can, but the effort ends up provoking a loud sneeze that echoes through the room. She brings her hand to her mouth in panic, but it's already too late. From the next room, she hears the thugs commenting among themselves that they heard a noise coming from the nearby room. They quickly run towards the door of Lysithia's room, the hurried sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. Our protagonist struggles to remain calm, even with her heart racing, as she hears the quick footsteps approaching her direction. The men shake the door of the room forcefully, trying to break it down to get in. A bang echoes down the hallway as one of the men shoots at the lock, trying to force the door open. Outside, the men argue, trying to decide who will be the next to shoot at the door, since the first shot had no effect. One of them, impatient, starts pounding on the wood hard, shouting for whoever is inside to open immediately. Our poor protagonist grips the revolver tightly in her hands, feeling the cold metal as she listens to the heavy knocks against the door. The banging suddenly stops when one of the thugs notices something outside, drawing the attention of the others. Before they can understand what is happening, a precise shot echoes and hits Cleed, the thug who was pounding on the door, causing him to fall to the ground. The leader considers reacting, but before he can draw his weapon, a second shot hits him squarely, knocking him down instantly. Not understanding what is happening, Lysithea hears the dull sound of two heavy things falling to the ground. She slides down the back of the wall, supporting herself as a coughing fit overtakes her, and silently prays that Taran is already back. Footsteps approach the door, and outside, Taran's voice calls her, filled with concern. As much as she wants to open the door, the relief of hearing Taran's voice, combined with the adrenaline that begins to dissipate, leaves her momentarily unresponsive. He warns in a firm voice that he is going to enter and asks her not to shoot. She utters his name with relief upon seeing him, and Taran, clearly more at ease to see that she is okay, tells her to wait inside and not to come out, as he needs to clean things up. Lysithea screams, "Watch out behind you." In panic, Lysithea brings her hands to her face, covering her eyes, unable to face what is about to happen. A dry sound of a blade piercing stab echoes in the air, followed by a heavy thud, like something falling hard to the ground. Still sitting and looking at the floor, Lysithea shudders, her trembling voice escaping in a weak whimper as she calls out Taran's name. She lifts her gaze upon hearing his voice calling for her. "Keep your eyes closed. The scene is not very pleasant," he says, looking at her with concern, as tears well up in her eyes. Realizing he is okay, she hugs him tightly, as if she wants to make sure he is really there and safe. She wraps him in a tight embrace and, with a slightly trembling voice, says that she is fine. Taran, however, shows concern upon noticing that she got dirty from hugging him. Worried, Lysithea directly asks if he is okay. Calmly, Taran reassures her, saying that he is. The thug had missed the stab. She runs her hands over his body, as if needing to confirm with her own touch that he is really okay. After all, he had just taken down 3 men and had not a single scratch. The feverish heat still burning under her skin reminded him that she needed to take her medicine, and that she had probably been waiting for him for a long and distressing time. "I wondered all the time when you would come back," she says, her voice choked, almost letting the tears slip. When she hears this, she wraps him in a tight hug again, as if she wants to imprint in her memory that he was there, whole, back for her. After a few seconds, he gently pulls her away, insisting that she take her medicine, let the fever subside, and rest a little while he takes care of cleaning the whole place. Lysithea offers to help him clean everything, but he firmly refuses, insisting that she stay in the room and rest. It would probably be faster if he did everything alone, and besides, he needed her to get better soon. He steps away, saying that as soon as he finishes, he will come back to clean her room too. And before she could say anything, he closed the door behind him, leaving her alone in the room. Feeling her body warm, she takes the medicine that Taran brought. Glancing at one of the mirrors in the room, she is startled to notice how pale and dirty she looks. She takes off her dirty clothes and walks to the bed to try to sleep a little while the medicine takes effect. She quickly falls asleep, and the only thought accompanying her is how much she wishes Taran were there, by her side, at that moment. Some time passes while Lysithea sleeps peacefully, and upon waking, she looks around, realizing that her dirty clothes have disappeared and that the red stains in the room have also been cleaned. Concluding that Taran had organized everything, including her clothes, she couldn't help but be impressed. She gets out of bed and goes to her bag, starting to look for a change of clean clothes. However, she interrupts the movement, thinking that perhaps a bath would be a better option at that moment. Lysithea remembers that on the first floor, there is a bathroom with hot bathtubs and probably warm water waiting for her. She wraps herself in a blanket and leaves the room towards the bathroom, realizing that the medicine has indeed taken effect, as she now feels much better. As she approaches the bathroom, Lysithea sees a large amount of steam coming from the slightly open door. She approaches curiously and sees Taran filling the bathtub with hot water. She watches him, mesmerized, seeing Taran's torso muscles move with each gesture as he concentrates on his work. After a few seconds of just watching, and realizing that he is so focused that he hasn't noticed her presence yet, Lysithea finally calls him by name. He smiles upon hearing her voice calling him, and without stopping what he is doing, asks if she is feeling better. She thanks him for his concern, stating that she is feeling much better thanks to him. Lysithea notices one of the basins has the dress she was wearing earlier. She leans down to grab the dress, and while telling Taran that he should take a bath first, as she is going to the kitchen to wash the dress, Taran gently holds her by the waist and says, "Wait, where do you think you're going?" The sudden closeness puts him dangerously near, making her face flush. He is too close, and she is only wrapped in that sheet, with nothing underneath. Quickly, she explains that she was going to wash the clothes, but Taran, with a slightly annoyed tone, says that he had prepared the bathtub for her to use. Therefore, she should take a bath first. Our protagonist responds that he shouldn't worry so much about her, that she just needs a quick bath, especially since he ended up getting much dirtier than she did. Taran insists, saying that even so, she should take her bath first and calmly, reminding her that she just recovered from an illness. "Go ahead. The hot water will do you good. After all, we can't let you get sick again," he says firmly but in a caring tone. Somehow, that mix of authority and care stirs something in Lysithea, leaving her slightly flushed. She nods and, with a slight smile, thanks Taran for taking such good care of her. Observing the bathtub, she comments that it is excessively large. While putting on his shirt, Taran agrees with her, explaining that he initially intended to fill it only halfway, but he became worried that she might catch another cold, so he filled the bathtub completely. She calls him before he steps away, asking him to wait, and then asks if he wouldn't like to take a bath with her since the bathtub is so big. He looks her in the eyes, surprised by the invitation, and as he realizes how his own words could be interpreted, she feels her face heat up, turning red and visibly embarrassed. Murmuring, she explains that, in fact, she just didn't want to waste the hot water since the bathtub is enormous. "So that's why?" Taran asks in a teasing tone. Lysithea looks away, responding too quickly that of course that was all, although the blush on her face says otherwise. Taran smiles and starts to take off his shirt again, saying that since that's the case, he won't refuse. Lysithea closes her eyes as soon as Taran begins to undress, overwhelmed by embarrassment but feeling her heart race. He starts to wash himself, and noticing that she was still there, standing still, he calls her with a slight teasing tone, asking if she was going to take a bath or if she intended to stand there all night. She reacts to his comment, taking a step as if she were going to move, but soon stops again, becoming mesmerized as she watches him, unable to look away. Taran glances in her direction and realizes that, once again, she was just standing there, silently watching him. "Is that why you invited me to take a bath?" he asked with a crooked smile. "To be eye candy for you while I wash?" Stammering with nerves, she replies that it was nothing like that, explaining that she was just waiting because he was using the only basin they had. But silently, she couldn't help but feel a bit rejected. After all, she seemed to be the only one enchanted by looking at him, while he didn't even try to cast a glance in her direction. He leaves the basin near her and steps into the bathtub, turning his back to her as he relaxes. Lysithea hesitates for a moment, overwhelmed by embarrassment at the possibility that he might suddenly look back. Gathering courage, she splashes herself with the basin and prepares to enter the bathtub. Embarrassed and with a slight regret for having made that invitation, she hesitates for a moment before finally moving into the water. When she sits in the bathtub, he asks, in a slightly playful tone, if she usually covers herself this much to take a bath. She explains that the water is clear and that since they were both using the bathtub, she thought it would be more polite to cover herself this way. Then she tilts her head slightly and asks if he could do something about that. "That?" Taran asks, with the tone of false innocence. With her hand covering her face, she replies, embarrassed, that she is referring to the thing between his legs. "Oh, that. Is it bothering you?" he says, with a mischievous smile. "Funny. I had the impression that you liked it." Lysithea jumps, surprised by Taran's bold words. Catching her breath and trying to calm down, she explains that it's not that she didn't like it, but that it was her first time. Taran breaks into a warm smile and comments that he was sure she had enjoyed it too. After all, if that weren't the case, she wouldn't be there, sitting so close to him. Despite the embarrassment, Lysithea couldn't deny to herself that he was right. "And how have your dreams been?" Taran asks, leaving Lysithea slightly confused. He then explains that since the incident in the cave, she has been able to sleep quite a bit, and therefore has probably spent some time with him in her dreams as well. She knew she had had a steamy dream about him, but she couldn't find the courage to tell. For a moment, she wondered if it would be better to just lie. Remembering everything they had been through together and the times he had saved her life, she decides to be honest. After all, she trusted him. "You're right. I dreamed about you," she says, embarrassed, but with a firm and confident tone of voice. And to be honest, she says she prefers how things were in the dream rather than in reality. Interested, he stands up and starts to approach her, asking how the dream she had was. She explains in a low voice that in the dream he had been kind to her, treating her with affection from start to finish. He leans in, wrapping her in an embrace, and asks in a low and curious tone what else she dreamed about. "That you kissed me," she confesses, and as soon as the words leave her lips, he kisses her tenderly. The kiss, like a sudden spark, ignites a warm and romantic moment between the two. She whispers his name, feeling the intense weight of his gaze upon her. They kiss for a while until he gently holds her chin, keeping his eyes fixed on hers, and asks, "It started with the kiss like this. And then, what else happened?" She remembers with her heart racing that in the dream he had leaned in to whisper in her ear that he loved her, but she doesn't respond, too embarrassed by her own thoughts to reveal this to Taran. Seeing that she doesn't respond, he starts to tease her, insisting that she tell exactly how the rest of the dream went. Although he is extremely skilled in his teasing, our protagonist firmly resists, convinced that if she told that part of the dream, he would think she was desperate for love. He looks at her seriously for a moment and asks if she is afraid to tell. Then he softens his tone and adds that if that's the case, she doesn't need to be afraid. After all, they know each other well. But Lysithea only stammers in response, unable to form a complete sentence under the weight of his gaze. Then he smiles at her and says with a soft confidence, not to worry, because he will make it as good as in her dream. After some time together, she hugs Taran, exhausted, and admits with a satisfied sigh that it had been even better than in her dream. He notices a small bruise on her elbow and wonders how that happened. Lysithea comments that it was probably during the little adventure they had in the bathtub earlier. Upset, he comments that this makes him a liar, as he had promised not to hurt her, but she replies that it's okay, as she also hadn't been completely honest about what happened after the kiss. After the kiss, "You said you loved me," she says, finally revealing what she had been keeping to herself. Taran's expression changes completely, becoming serious and somber. He remains silent for a few seconds. Taran looked at her with a piercing gaze and asked, "Is that what she wants from me, Lysithea? That I love her?" Lysithea is taken aback for a few seconds, but soon retorts, "No. At least not if it's put that way, as if it were just a clause in a contract." Returning to his usual relaxed expression, Taran smiled and said that she should tell him what she wanted, so he could assess if it was worth putting in the contract. She realizes that, for Taran, everything still sounded like a contractual relationship, lacking the emotional weight she herself was feeling. Pushing that uncomfortable thought aside, Lysithea looks at him with a more serious air and asks him to help her stay well, without nightmares, especially after everything they had faced that day. Taran opens a mischievous smile and, moving closer to her, asserts that he would make sure she slept very well that night. Then, without hesitation, he picks up where they had left off earlier. The scene cuts to one of the rooms, where Lysithea is lying on the bed. Still sleepy, Lysithea opens her eyes and, with blurry vision, manages to distinguish Taran's smile. "Good morning," says Taran cheerfully when Lysithea wakes up, surprised to be sharing the same bed with him. He pulls her closer in an embrace and says with a smile that he couldn't even remember the last time he had a morning like that. Taran continued smiling while holding her in his arms, saying that it was very nice to wake up that way, especially in the cold. Besides, it was an effective way to save firewood. Meanwhile, Lysithea blushes, feeling strangely comfortable with the warmth of his body so close to hers. Taran, noticing that she is a bit tense, smiles and jokingly tells her to relax. She was making it seem like he was holding a piece of wood with how stiff she was. Embarrassed by Taran's comment, Lysithea tries to hide her own tension. Realizing that her effort is in vain, she ends up snuggling into Taran's arms, seeking to relax there. Taran, noticing how strange that situation still is for her, decides to tease her, commenting with a mischievous smile that he is a bit sore from carrying her last night. He takes her hand and firmly guides it to his chest, keeping it there. "See?" he teases with a half smile. "You're tense, aren't you?" "Really?" replies Lysithea, blushing even more, her face almost as red as her own hair, while her heart races at the intense way Taran looks at her. Taran holds her hands firmly, and looking at her with a puppy dog gaze, playfully says, "Well, that's why you're going to have to take care of me today." To his surprise, Lysithea leans in and kisses him softly. Then she tenderly caresses Taran's face and, with a passionate look, whispers that she will take good care of him. Proudly, Taran gives a sideways smile and teasingly compliments her, I see you've become quite seductive, my lady. In the days that followed, using the snowstorm and the cold outside as the perfect excuse, Taran and Lysithea surrendered to each other intensely, living almost like a newlywed couple. And at least for our protagonist, she didn't want that intense passion to come to an end. Sleeping next to Taran, feeling the warmth of his body close to hers, became an everyday occurrence for her, almost as if she truly belonged there. With him, she seemed to be the happiest person in the world, as if nothing else mattered, if only things could continue that way. A few days later, the two were in their room sleeping together. Taran wakes up first and, seeing her open her eyes, greets her with a soft, "Good morning." As she responds to the greeting, he lovingly wraps her in his arms and, with a tender smile, says that today he will let her rest. "You said the same thing yesterday, and you didn't keep your word," she retorts, turning red. With a mischievous smile on his lips, he replied playfully, "Did I? I don't remember that." Taran, thoughtful, comments that they have spent all their time together in the last week. Lysithea is surprised to realize how quickly a week has passed. They found various excuses to stay together, and since Lysithea started sleeping next to Taran, she no longer heard the screams at night. Feeling the warmth of his body, she closes her eyes peacefully. Certain that there were no ghosts, it was all just her mind and fear playing tricks on her. She starts to pull away from Taran, saying she will prepare breakfast, but he pulls her close and kisses her, preventing her from getting out of bed. As if drawn by a magnet, she moves closer to him again while kissing him. Looking at her face, still flushed from the kiss, he lovingly pronounces her name. "I'm afraid I won't be able to stay with you all day tomorrow," he said. Surprised, she looks at him and asks why and where he is going. With a distant look, he explains that now that the snowstorm has calmed down, he thought it would be a good time to go get another horse. Looking out the window, she realizes that it has indeed stopped snowing. Getting out of bed and starting to get ready, Taran explains that although the trip will only take a day, he needs some time to prepare. Therefore, it would be better for them to sleep in separate rooms that night. Worried about the possibility of hearing the screams again, she asks him, almost pleadingly, if at least that night they could sleep together. But Taran says that unfortunately that won't be possible. He explains that he needs to rest as much as possible to make the trip efficiently, and that with her by his side he would end up getting distracted. "But," murmurs Lysithea, still lying in bed, watching Taran leave the room. Noticing her hesitation, he turns around and, in a firm voice, assures her that she will be fine, that she is safe. Saying this, Taran goes out to organize his things. Lysithea remains lying in bed, but feels uneasy remembering how the first nights she spent in that mansion were. She closes her eyes and grips the sheets tightly, thinking that even if it's just a contractual relationship, she would still be happy as long as she could be by Taran's side. Later that same day, Lysithea is outside holding a rifle, focused as if aiming at something in the distance. She pulls the trigger, and at that moment, the loud sound of the shot echoes, causing the birds in the area to fly away in fright. But she feels a bit irritated seeing that she missed the target and the bottle remains intact. The sound of Taran's voice catches her attention. He seems surprised that she is practicing. Lysithea stated with a firm gaze directed at the bottle she was using as a target that she didn't have the luxury of time on her side and needed to learn to shoot as quickly as possible. Taran, in turn, retorts by asking if she regretted spending the entire last week by his side. Turning red, she replies that she does not regret it. He walks over to the bottle, saying he will make it a little easier for her to aim. As he removes it from its place, he explains that the trees in the background make it difficult for her to focus on the target. He places the bottle in a spot where, in the background, there are only snow-covered mountains, showing how this way it becomes much easier for her to see the target. Taking his role as a teacher seriously, he asks if she remembers what he taught her, about what she should keep in mind when shooting. While aiming, Lysithea mentally recites what Taran had taught her. Maintain the proper position, with arms and shoulders firm to minimize recoil. Eyes wide open, focused on the target. Breathe calmly, and a moment before shooting, hold her breath. As if he were listening to her thoughts, Taran approaches from behind, places his hand over hers, and in a low but firm voice commands, "Now." Lysithea pulls the trigger and the shot echoes, hitting the bottle squarely and shattering it into several pieces. Happy and at the same time incredulous, Lysithea exclaims to Taran that she did it. But in the distance, something catches her attention, something falling to the ground while nearby a horse was running away. Our protagonist immediately becomes worried, wondering if she had accidentally shot someone. Without thinking twice, she runs towards the fallen person, ignoring Taran's concerned voice calling after her. She finds a blonde man lying on the ground, and Lysithea sighs in relief upon realizing that he has no gunshot wounds. Mentally, she wonders what that man is doing there. if he is just passing through or perhaps a bandit expelled from his own group. As a precaution, she decides that she must check if he is carrying any weapons. But then Taran calls her, this time with a serious voice and a dark tone. In that instant, she realizes that something is wrong. When she turns around, she sees Taran with the rifle aimed at the blonde man lying on the ground. Startled, Lysithea asks what he is doing, but he does not answer. He only firmly orders her to step away from the man. With a serious expression, he states that he hopes she is not thinking of saving that man. He reminds her that she is still a fugitive and that he is working for her. They cannot take risks. Taran cocks the weapon, ready to shoot, but Lysithea moves quickly and positions herself in front of the man. Standing between him and Taran, "Wait!" she exclaims with some desperation. "He may not be a threat. He might just be an innocent traveler. If we take him to the mansion, we could take care of him." Interrupting her with a piercing look, Taran retorts that just because the man doesn't look like a bandit doesn't mean he isn't one. He asks if Lysithea has already forgotten what happened some time ago, and what makes her so sure that he won't hurt them. Determined, Lysithea asserts that even if he is a bandit, killing him like that, without even giving him the right to defend himself, is wrong. Still aiming the weapon at the man, Taran says with a cold expression that it is not up to her to decide that. Taran orders in a harsh tone that she step away from the man, but Lysithea stands firm, not moving an inch. While the two argue, the man begins to cough, showing signs that he is regaining consciousness. He raises his eyes to our protagonist with an expression of agony and, in a weak voice, asks for help. Lysithea promptly turns to the man and starts talking to him, trying to calm him down and saying that she will help him. She then turns to Taran, practically begging for help with just her gaze. He sighs, visibly irritated, and then, shortly after, he lowers the weapon, still begrudgingly. "You ruined everything," he says with a wounded expression directed at her. Lysithea ignores him and begins to help the man get up, struggling to support him as she tries to take him back to the mansion. Clearly irritated, Taran takes the man from Lysithea's arms and, picking him up, carries him alone toward the mansion. Our protagonist is surprised by Taran's coldness. Doubt gnaws at her. If the man hadn't woken up during the argument, would Taran really have shot him? No, I don't want to believe he would be capable of such a thing, she thinks, trying to push that idea from her mind. Certain of this, she follows Taran in silence, watching him carry the man in his arms. Sometime later, already at the mansion, the man, now appearing to be better, thanks them for saving him. Lysithea feels relieved to realize that, luckily, the man hadn't heard the conversation she had with Taran before waking up. The man introduces himself as Grey Hoflander, and then politely asks for the names of his rescuers. Lysithea begins to say her name, but Taran interrupts her and introduces her to Grey as Liz. He introduces himself as Karen Cardis, saying he is a hunter, and presents Liz as his wife. Our protagonist feels slightly irritated by the fact that Taran referred to her as his wife. Honestly, I don't understand the reason for this irritation. She loves him, doesn't she? So, wouldn't it be nice to have the man you love refer to you as his wife? The more Grey talks, the more Lysithea can't help but notice the peculiar way he expresses himself. Noticing Lysithea's gaze, Grey apologizes for his peculiar way of speaking, explaining that it is a habit he acquired because of his work. When asked what he does, he responds with an almost smile on his lips that he is a detective. Lysithea is surprised after all. She had never met a detective before. Meanwhile, Taran, indifferent, tells Grey that he and his wife are just passing through, traveling. "We were on our way to the port when it started to snow heavily," Taran says, quickly following up with a question, wanting to know if Grey was also heading to the port. With a tired expression, Grey explains that he had business in the capital and that he has been working too much lately. He recounts that, upon hearing the gunshot, he was so startled that he ended up fainting. He comments that he was very lucky to have been found and taken in by such a nice couple. In a passive-aggressive way, Taran comments that it was really lucky for them to have found him, and then asks when he plans to return to the capital. Noticing Taran's tone, Grey breaks into a wide smile and replies that he will head to the capital as soon as Harmony, his mare, returns. She probably ran off scared because of the gunshot. Lysithea apologizes to Grey for scaring his mare away, but he reassures her, telling her not to worry. He explains that he and Harmony have been together for a long time and that he is sure she will come back. Taran reminds them that now that the snowstorm has eased, it would be a good time to look for a horse and leave. He then adds that he hopes Harmony returns as soon as possible. Pensive, Grey comments that, with a bit of luck, he should be able to leave in a day or two. That night, Taran and Lysithea argue. She complains that he introduced her as his wife, which only irritates him further. as he doesn't understand why she is so upset about what, to him, is just a little lie. She explains that if Gray starts asking questions about them, it would have been much easier if Taran had said she was his sister. But Taran retorts that that would be even more suspicious, considering they don't look alike at all. The two fall silent for a few minutes while glaring at each other irritably. Come on, Taran. Everyone knows the main reason you introduced her as your wife is so that the handsome blonde guy can't hit on a married woman. Ha 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 ha. At least in my mind, that's what makes the most sense. And stating the obvious, Taran asks why she cares so much about the fact that he said she was his wife, when in the last few days, they have been acting exactly like a married couple. There you go, that's it. I would also love to know the reason for our protagonist's outburst regarding this. With a sober and judgmental expression, Taran continues, asserting that she is not in a position to complain about anything, since it was because of her that they ended up in that complicated situation. Clenching her fist, our protagonist retorts that the blame is not entirely hers. After all, it was he who insisted on changing the position of the bottle. Exactly for that reason, I provided a solution to the problem, but you refused to accept it, he replies, irritated. Things would have been much easier if we had just eliminated him. How can you talk about killing someone so easily? Questions Lysithea, her voice choked. With a cold look, he replies that he would like to ask her something. How can she trust people so easily? Taran's question makes Lysithea feel a tightness in her chest, and in a low, almost whispered voice, she responds, "Because I have you by my side." Taran, irritated, asserts that even so, Lysithea cannot just go around trusting people. She, stung, retorts sarcastically, apologizing for relying on him. The two continue to argue, their voices rising, the sharp words cutting through the silence of the mansion. He sighs, irritated, as he says he will cancel the trip in the morning since he cannot leave her alone with a stranger. Lysithea insists that he can go, assuring him that she will be fine, but Taran retorts that this is not her decision. Not after the mess she caused by approaching that man recklessly and disrupting all the plans Taran had. "Stop acting like you are my real husband," Lysithea explodes, staring at him. He then steps closer to her. Irritated, he grabs her wrist tightly, asserting that her life is in his hands. "Or have you forgotten the countless times I saved your life?" He retorts, his voice heavy with fury. Remembering everything they have been through together and all the times she depended on him, she admits to being grateful for that, but that only means I owe you. Not that you command or can command me, she continues, trying to free her wrist. Taran looks at her with a saddened expression, not loosening his grip immediately. "I also have a life," Taran replies, leaving Lysithea unsure of what he means by that. Before she can ask anything else, he firmly grabs her chin and, in a harsh voice, declares that from now on she will do what he says and will continue pretending they are a couple. Otherwise, his patience will run out, and he will not put his own life at risk. If necessary, he will leave her alone. Lysithea feels as if Taran has a gun pointed at her, that in that relationship she is the weakest prey. Thus, she sees no other option but to listen to him. Despite being bothered by this, what hurts her the most is that Taran in front of her doesn't seem like the same person she knows. Still, Lysithea loudly asserts that she will do whatever he commands. Taran looks at her seriously, and even after her response, still shows signs of irritation. He turns and walks toward his own room, saying nothing more than a curt "good night" to her. He slams the door hard as he leaves, leaving the room immersed in silence. Our protagonist, not recognizing who this Taran in front of her is, silently gets up and walks to the bed, throwing herself onto the sheets, mentally exhausted. Everything is ruined now, she thinks, before finally falling asleep. The next morning, Lysithea goes to the dining hall to have breakfast and finds Gray and Taran already seated at the table, eating. The atmosphere between Taran and Lysithea is still charged with tension, noticeable even in the silence that hangs between them. As soon as she settles in, Taran gets up from the table. While taking his plate to the kitchen, he dryly comments that he will get her a plate of food. Gray, sensing the heavy atmosphere, lightly remarks that her husband seems to be in a bad mood. Embarrassed, she replies that sometimes he is in a bad mood, but not always, and that it will pass soon. Taran returns and places the meal in front of Lysithea, commenting that she should correct her sleeping schedule since she is always late for breakfast. She apologizes, explaining that she had trouble sleeping last night and that's why she ended up being late. "Again?" he says, giving her a firm look. Lysithea looks away, saying nothing. Gray interrupts the moment, offering to keep her company during the meal, as he usually eats very slowly. Taran gets up and leaves, saying he will be upstairs if they need him. Lysithea casts a worried glance in Taran's direction. Meanwhile, Gray strikes up a conversation and asks if they were going to the port to the north. She confirms with a nod that yes. Then Gray comments that it must be the port of Sylvanes, although he doesn't remember there being any attractions there besides the port itself. She states in a nostalgic tone that they were going there to see the sea. Gray, for his part, observes that the sea is frozen. Surprised, she asks how he knows the sea is frozen, since that region is usually known for its warmer waters. With an indescribable expression, Gray retorts that he would like to ask her the same thing. How does she know that? Our protagonist realizes that Gray is more perceptive than she imagined, and that she must be much more careful about what she says in his presence. Regaining her composure, she explains that since the port was the destination of the trip, they learned about the situation through relatives. But to her astonishment, he simply comments that, in his case, he was coming from the port of Sylvanes. He explains that he had been there for 2 months for work, and that he was now returning to the capital to make his report on the service. Lysithea feels more at ease upon hearing this. After all, it made sense for him to know about the sea since he was coming from there. Still, calmly, she comments that she didn't know that some cases could take up to 2 months to resolve. She adds that, normally, in detective stories from books, everything seems to happen much faster. After that, they continue chatting animatedly about detective cases and books, exchanging stories and impressions lightly. Gray suggests that later they could go out to explore the mansion together. They then go for a walk later, and as they walk, Lysithea notices Gray. His imposing height and refined posture remind her a lot of the nobles she used to know. As they walk, Gray comments that despite her husband's bad mood that morning, they seem to have a good relationship. He then asks how long they have been married. Without thinking too much, she replies that they got married last year. Now, they are on this trip to celebrate their marriage. Although she answers confidently, inside she makes a mental note. At some point, she and Taran need to decide what their story together will be, in case Gray asks again when they are not side by side. He continues bombarding the protagonist with a barrage of questions, both about her and Taran as a couple and about each of their individual lives. Lysithea struggles to respond as best as she can, even though it is mentally stressing her. Especially because, with each answer, she feels Gray's gaze judging and analyzing her closely, even though he hides well behind a kind and carefree facade. Lysithea continues responding to Gray, striving to appear as convincing and cheerful as possible. However, at one point, he comments that he finds it strange that they slept in separate rooms that night, since in his own words, they love each other so much. This makes our protagonist freeze for a moment. His comment deeply irritates her, and Lysithea, unable to hide her feelings, looks at him firmly and questions suspiciously how, after all, he knows such an intimate detail. With a calm smile on his face, Gray asks her not to conclude anything wrong about him, assuring her that he wasn't spying on the couple. What happened, he explains, was that the night before he was going to check if his horse had returned when he noticed that there were lit fireplaces in 2 adjacent rooms. But Lysithea remains irritated, not buying his talk. Firmly, she retorts that, even so, he was meddling in the private life of a couple who aren't even his friends. Gray, hearing this, apologizes to her, but she maintains her irritated tone, explaining that last night they had an argument over money, and for that reason, they ended up deciding to sleep in separate rooms. Just that. Nothing more. Gray's questions and remarks sound more like a veiled threat than a casual conversation, and our protagonist begins to feel worried, realizing that he has already investigated quite a bit since the moment he arrived. Seriously, Lys, the guy is literally a detective. I'm sure he has already figured out who you really are. Continuing the little tour and, to our protagonist's delight, diverting the focus from personal questions, Gray starts commenting on the mansion, praising its size and the number of rooms. Curiously, he asks if she has explored all of them yet. She immediately remembers that bizarre interrogation room and decides that she shouldn't mention it to Gray. Fortunately, he doesn't notice her concern, as he is too excited talking about the mansion and how it must be full of strange things, since a smuggler of illegal substances was its former owner. Realizing that talking about the mansion is also not a good idea, Lysithea decides to change the subject. She asks Gray about Harmony, hoping that this will distract him and steer the conversation toward a more neutral topic. Initially, the plan works. The conversation shifts, and they begin to talk about Harmony and her rebelliousness in not returning to her owner yet. Until suddenly, they pause in their walking, and Gray breaks the silence by saying in a low voice, 287 steps. First floor from end to end. She furrows her brow, clearly confused by the enigmatic comment, and asks Gray what exactly he meant by that. Gray explains that both the first and second floors of the mansion are exactly the same size as they appear from the outside. Because it is such a large mansion, and having belonged to an eccentric nobleman, Gray confesses that he expected to find a secret room hidden somewhere. He adds that in mansions like that, it is almost normal for there to be secret rooms, hidden passages, or concealed chambers, as many former owners like to keep their secrets and treasures well guarded. Lysithea, filled with curiosity, asks if he is looking for something specific, and if that is why he seems so obsessed with finding the hidden room. Gray admits that he had heard about that mansion before. He explains that there were rumors that some of its former owners used certain anesthetic herbs recreationally. Our protagonist directly asks if that type of herb was really used in the mansion. Gray confirms that, most likely, yes. And precisely because of that, after the former owner's death, so many people came to loot it. The most interesting thing, he emphasizes, is that there is one specific substance that has never been found. And this substance, he explains, is known as the truth powder. Many believe in its existence, and for years people have been searching for it without success. A substance so cruel that it can break all mental barriers of those who ingest it, forcing the person to reveal the truth about anything they are asked. Moreover, the truth powder also paralyzes and slows down the body's movements, leaving the user vulnerable for a short period while it remains active in the system. He admits, without beating around the bush, that it would be great to find this powder, since there are many people interested in products of this kind, and with that, he could make a good amount of money. Lysithea, worried, questions whether it doesn't bother him that if he finds the powder and sells it, the person who buys it might use it to harm others. Gray, however, responds without hesitation. He explains that he needs the money to survive, and that, in the end, bad people will always find a way to do harm, regardless of anything. They finally arrive at the door of the room where Gray is staying, and Lysithea takes the opportunity to say goodbye. He, with an enigmatic smile, returns the farewell, saying he hopes things between her and her husband get resolved soon. Gray adds that she should try to talk more with her husband, as he knows that, typically, men involved in dangerous jobs have difficulty expressing their feelings. He continues by saying that these men try their best to hide what they really feel, perhaps because of the constant stress that the profession imposes. Lysithea agrees with him, saying he is right, and then asks, with a hint of curiosity and uncertainty, how she should approach a man like that. Gray calmly explains that she needs to offer him enough security, create a space where he feels he can let his guard down. Only then will he be able to truly open up. He adds that, above all, she must give him what he longs for and desires the most, as that is how he will feel confident enough to reveal what he truly keeps inside. Lysithea ponders, reflecting on what Taran really desires. Until that moment, he had never asked much of her. She recalls that, in fact, Taran had only asked her for simple things, that she remain quiet and safe, that she speak whenever she felt scared or was unwell, and that she cook for him. They were all things of give and take, a form of reciprocation for everything he had done for her. None of this seemed to be something he truly desired for himself. Lysithea thanks him for the advice, then says goodbye to Gray. He enters his room, closing the door behind him, and leaving Lysithea alone in the hallway, lost in her own thoughts. The doubt echoes in her mind. What does Taran really want? What is it that deep down he longs for from her? Determined to find out what it is, Lysithea takes a deep breath and heads toward her room. She sits down, diving into her own thoughts, while looking around and searching for the material things she possesses. What she has that is most valuable: the engagement ring with Prince Jade and the money set aside to pay Taran when he completes the job. Aside from that, everything else is just clothes and items of little value. Of the things she can give him, is there something he would like? And among all the things she could offer him, Lysithea wonders if there is anything there that would truly spark Taran's interest, something she could give to Taran. An idea comes to her mind. She walks to Taran's room, her heart tight with uncertainty. And when she reaches the door, she stops for a moment, hesitating. Gray must be out there looking for harmony. That's why she knows this is a good time to talk to Taran without being interrupted. She knocks on the door asking if she can come in, but there is no response, until she hears a click and the door opens. Is everything okay? Taran asks as he approaches the door of his room, as she informs him that Gray is outside, so he doesn't need to act. Taran's posture changes as soon as he realizes her presence. His gaze narrows, his voice slightly irritated as he asks in a dry tone what exactly she wants. She extends her hand and gently touches his, trying to ease the tension. With a sincere look, she says she just wants to talk to him for a minute. He sighs deeply, and then he allows Lysithea to enter the room. As soon as she enters, Lysithea tries to lighten the mood by commenting on the room, noticing small details to start a conversation. But Taran soon interrupts her, his expression serious, asking her to get straight to the point. I came to apologize for my behavior the other day, says Lysithea. Taran retorts firmly. So you finally agree that you were wrong? No, she responds firmly. I don't think I was wrong. Taran lets out a sarcastic smile as he looks at her. Really? Then why the hell are you apologizing, huh? Lysithea places her hand on her chest and with a calm voice admits that she apologizes for pressuring Taran to follow her own values and principles. She acknowledges that they come from different worlds and that she shouldn't have expected him to think the same way she does. Taran, irritated, his voice laden with irony as he stares at her. So you mean you came here just to tell me that you know what my ethics and morals are? Lysithea looks at him seriously, and in a firm tone says that she sees him as a man who evaluates the situation well and does not take unnecessary risks, who does not hesitate to take more drastic measures if necessary, and if his plan fails, even when irritated, he seeks alternative ways to fix it. And because of your way, you got angry with me yesterday for disrupting your plan and leaving you in a complicated situation because despite everything, I am still your client. And it's not so simple to get rid of Mr. Hoflander anymore. Even knowing that her conclusion isn't entirely wrong, Taran gives a sarcastic smile, saying it's not that difficult. He says he can easily get rid of that detective at any moment, but he decided to observe a bit since he has time on his hands. Lysithea is shocked that Taran seems to find the situation funny and simple, but she suppresses that feeling, remembering that they come from very different worlds and creations. Lysithea kept her gaze steady on Taran, serious, saying that in any case, that was what she believed, and she wanted to know if she was wrong. Taran leaned back slightly, a crooked smile appearing on his lips, then replied that they could assume she was right. Taran approached Lysithea, his steps slow, his gaze fixed on hers, intense, while his low voice carried a challenging tone. He asked what the next step would be now that she finally understood him. She explains that the first step was to apologize, acknowledging the weight of the situation. After that, she assured him that she would start acting more consciously, taking into account his way and his concepts. In a firm but affectionate tone, Lysithea asked him not to think or speak of killing someone so easily. As she said this, her hand gently rose to Taran's face, touching him softly, as if she wanted to calm the darkness she saw reflected in him. Taran slightly widened his eyes, surprised by her unexpected gesture. For a moment, his rigid posture faltered, and almost without realizing it, the words slipped from his lips in a low and curious tone. He asked, "What? When you have problems in the future, please don't let killing be your first option," she says, looking into his eyes. "You should know better than anyone that sometimes killing is the only option," he retorts. Lysithea says she knows Taran is a broker and that his work involves many risks, and that sometimes he has no other option. But she directly asks him to let her help, stating that together they can find another way out. Taran smiles sarcastically and asks how she intends to do that. Lysithea knows it's impossible to fully understand someone and isn't sure if that's really what he wants, but still decides to try. "Let's get out of here together," Lysithea speaks confidently. The conclusion he reaches is simple. There is something valuable she can offer Taran. Herself. Taran remains thoughtful in silence for a few seconds until he finally asks, "Together? Yes?" she says determinedly. "I want you to come with me to the Duchy of Landis in the neighboring empire." Taran takes a deep breath and asks if Lysithea has any idea what she's saying. He reminds her that things are much more complicated than they seem. Lysithea immediately responds, saying she has money. She explains that with the amount of his fee and the prince's engagement ring, they could live comfortably for a good few years. Taran raises an eyebrow, staring at her, and asks if what Lysithea really wants is for them to live together. Lysithea firmly confirms, saying it makes more sense for them to live together since they will be fleeing side by side. Taran quickly counters without hesitation, making it clear that he doesn't enter into relationships. Holding on to a piece of his shirt, as if fearing he might pull away at any moment, Lysithea says she knows he doesn't get involved, but still adds that they could simply share a house, without it meaning they are officially together. Taran looks at her incredulously, asking if she would really be willing to do all that just because she hates it when he kills people. Then he seriously asks if she has gone crazy. Well, my dear listeners, our protagonist really took the most disastrous route possible to approach the male lead. My God, what a disaster waiting to happen. But I promise the story gets better and has a good ending. So hang in there. Lysithea, even more tightly gripping his clothes, confesses that when Taran considered killing Gray the day before, it made her feel nauseated. She says she felt betrayed, and that, in a way, this idea disturbed her deeply. Taran looks at her with a serious but concerned expression and asks if what she fears is that one day he will kill her. Lysithea firmly denies and explains that her greatest fear is not that. She confesses that what truly scared her was not feeling like herself, for not being able to hate him even after hearing all that. Then she looks at Taran sincerely and admits, the time they spent together changed her and she is in love with him. Lysithea declares intensely that she needs him and wants to be by his side, regardless of what kind of person he is. She states that together, they can overcome difficulties and become better people alongside each other. Despite being surprised by the confession, Taran tries to pull away. He reminds Lysithea that there is a contract between them and asserts that this is exactly why the agreement was created, so they could give each other what they wanted without needing to commit too much. Taran says he will be very clear. He will not run away with her. He will not escape with her. He adds that, at most, they will have 10 more days together until he finishes the job of taking her out of the Empire. After that, before he can finish what he was saying, Lysithea, overwhelmed by denial and despair, interrupts him. She declares that, in that case, she will not run away, that she will give up the plan. If escaping with her is not what he wants, they can use the money in another way. But what really matters to her is being able to stay by his side. Taran glares at her with anger etched on his face, his eyes hard. He asks why she is trying to ruin her own life in that way. Lysithea bursts into emotion, her voice trembling, confessing that it is because she loves him. And with a choked voice, Lysithea adds that it is precisely because she loves him that she wants to see him happy. Not as part of a contract or for a price, but truly. With a cold and distant look, Taran stares at her and states without hesitation that she is mistaken, that she does not truly love him. Lysithea insists, her voice heavy with emotion, saying that she does love him. But Taran repeats harshly that, no, she does not love him. Taran recalls that, the day before, when he pointed the gun at Gray, he clearly saw the expression in Lysithea's eyes. She was afraid of him. He adds that since the day she arrived at the mansion, she had already been afraid of him. And unfortunately, that feeling never changed. It just remained hidden, suppressed. Taran admits that, to be honest, he was glad she managed to suppress that fear, as it allowed them to have good moments until now. However, he adds that yesterday he clearly realized that this feeling still exists within her. With a sad look, Taran states that she does not truly love him. She just wants someone to protect her. Lysithea tries to say that this is ridiculous, asserting that she is not wrong about her own feelings. Taran interrupts her with a harsh voice, stating that she is wrong, and that this is not what he wants. As if putting the mask back on his face, hiding his own feelings, Taran forces a smile and reminds Lysithea of what she herself said, that she would do anything for him. Right? Then, Taran says that what he asks of her is simple, that she does not love him. He approaches Lysithea again and, in a restrained tone, reminds her that, as they are still under an active contract, he will give her what she wants while they remain in the mansion. While slowly pulling her shirt, he says that if what she wants is a husband, he will be one for her. Almost whispering, he asks her to stop ruining his plans. But the way he says it makes it clear that, deep down, it is as if he is begging her to stop awakening those feelings in him. And that night, they both surrender to each other intensely. No longer as Lysithea and Taran, but as Liz and Cardis, living that moment as husband and wife. But Lysithea, despite having been clearly rejected, cannot shake the thought that each kiss and each touch from him is too intense. Full of feeling, how could Taran claim that all of that was just an act? For Lysithea, the kiss he gives her is the kind of kiss that is only offered to someone who is truly loved. After the intense night, Taran holds her in a loving embrace and stays like that for a long time. Lysithea cannot help but notice that he has never held her for so long, nor in such a close and genuine way. With a low and hesitant voice, still nestled in his arms, Lysithea softly calls Taran's name. Taran slowly opens his eyes, keeping her in his arms, and quietly asks her to please stop being so honest. Lysithea, confused, looks at him and asks softly, "But I thought you hated dishonest people?" With a pained expression, Taran confirms that yes, he hates dishonest people. And that is precisely why he asks, almost pleading for her to stop. He is being dishonest with his own feelings. And it hurts more to see how honest our protagonist is being about her feelings. The next morning, they both wake up together in the same bed. Lysithea remains silent, staring at the ceiling for a few moments, while her mind spins around everything that happened the night before. Every word, every gesture, and every contradiction from Taran comes back to her memory, leaving her torn between doubt and hope. Although Taran is almost always the first to wake up, Lysithea notices that, even after calling for him a few times, he remains in a deep sleep. Worried, Lysithea gently touches his forehead and face, checking if Taran has a fever or is sick. Concluding that he is not ill, Lysithea gets up and quietly gets ready, believing that this is a good opportunity to do something nice for him. When Taran finally gets up and heads to the kitchen, he is surprised by an unusual sight. Lysithea is already there, busy cooking something for them, as if she wants to turn that morning into a special moment. Lysithea, a bit awkwardly, explains that she is making the tomato soup he had taught her. She admits that she doesn't remember the correct order of all the steps, but believes it will still turn out well. Out of the corner of his eye, Taran realizes that the soup will probably not turn out right, as Lysithea is clearly doing everything out of order and not properly following the recipe he had taught her. Taran approaches and, in a patient tone, explains to Lysithea that the correct order of the steps is important because, if not followed, the recipe simply won't work. Lysithea, looking at the tomatoes somewhat uncertainly, asks if she should throw everything away and start over from scratch. With an ironic laugh, Taran replies, no, that she doesn't need to throw it away. If the soup turns out bad, they can simply let the detective eat it. Lysithea notices, from his tone of voice, that Taran still clearly does not like Gray very much. Taran, glancing at her seriously, asks Lysithea if she really likes Gray, even though he is a risk to her. Lysithea confesses that she is not very worried about Gray, but admits her curiosity about why Taran is so cautious regarding him. Taran explains that for him, the detective and the wolf that attacked her are essentially the same thing. Although they act in different ways, the actions of both could end up hurting Lysithea, and, consequently, disrupting his plans. With a troubled look, Lysithea responds that she understands his point of view, and adds that she knows how important the contract between them is to him. Ignoring her comment and breaking the mood a bit, Taran asks why she suddenly decided to cook, questioning if this was just an attempt to act like a wife to deceive Gray. Visibly upset, Lysithea replies that no, she just wanted to do something special for him. Lysithea reminds Taran that just as he taught her to shoot, she had promised to cook for him someday, and now she was just fulfilling her promise. Noticing how upset she is, Taran calmly takes the knife from her hands and asks for permission. He asks Lysithea to watch him closely, saying that he will teach her again how to prepare the soup. He explains that this way, next time, she will be able to make it correctly on her own. My God, man, what an intense push and pull. He then begins to cook with mastery, each movement firm and precise, while Lysithea watches him closely, absorbing every detail in silence. The atmosphere between them gradually improves, and Taran continues cooking while giving small tips to Lysithea, explaining each step so that, next time, she can repeat it on her own. Noticing that Gray is not around and assuming he has gone after his horse, Lysithea feels happy to be able to share the meal alone with Taran. The scene shifts to the end of the day, showing Lysithea slowly climbing the stairs, visibly tired after a day full of tasks. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, Lysithea unexpectedly encounters Gray. The surprise is immediate, as she believed he had been out all day. Lysithea comments that she hasn't seen him all day, and asks if, by any chance, he spent all that time exploring the third floor. Gray responds excitedly that, yes, he found some really interesting things up there, and comments that it seems like everything important in the mansion is concentrated on that floor. Lysithea, recalling the macabre rooms she had seen on the third floor, feels a slight discomfort. Still, she tries to hide it and ends up asking Gray what exactly he found that was so interesting there. Gray, still excited, replies that he found many things, so many that he would even like to take some with him. But then his expression changes, becoming more serious. He pauses briefly and says that there is something he would like to ask Lysithea. Gray approaches Lysithea with a serious look and directly asks her if she has ever been to the third floor. When Lysithea confirms that she has been to the second floor, Gray stares at her intently and asks if she checked all the rooms. Then, Gray insists, asking if she found anything unusual in any of the rooms on the third floor. Lysithea then remembers the strange sound of something scratching the floor when she was on the third floor. The memory makes her feel insecure, and her expression reveals the doubt that arises in her mind. Noticing her expression, Gray observes her with a thoughtful look, as if he has already concluded that Lysithea found something. This makes her even more anxious, and she starts to stutter, trying to escape from that uncomfortable situation. Instinctively, Lysithea begins to take steps back, trying to distance herself from Gray. As she instinctively retreats, Gray, driven by curiosity, follows her step by step, getting closer to her. At that moment, Lysithea missteps on one of the stairs. She loses her balance and slips, beginning to fall rapidly. Gray, startled by the sudden fall, reacts immediately and extends his arms, trying to catch Lysithea to save her before she gets hurt. With the momentum, Gray ends up losing his balance as well. In reflex, he wraps his arms around her, trying to protect her from the impact, and they both end up falling together, embraced to the ground. He quickly gets up, visibly worried, and asks if Lysithea is hurt. She, still a bit dazed, replies that she is fine, just a little dizzy. Gray puts one arm behind Lysithea's back, carefully supporting her to help her get up. At that moment, Taran appears in the hallway. Seeing Lysithea and Gray still close together, his expression tightens in irritation. With a harsh voice filled with anger, he asks what the hell is going on there. Embarrassed, Gray quickly tries to explain what happened, saying that Lysithea slipped. But Taran does not respond. He just fixes Gray with a threatening look. In a serious voice, Taran asks Lysithea if that is what happened, keeping his eyes locked on her. Lysithea firmly confirms, explaining that it was just an accident and that Gray only tried to help her when she fell. Visibly consumed by jealousy, Taran speaks irritably, saying that she must enjoy talking to Gray so much that she lost focus and couldn't think straight, which caused her to slip. Lysithea begins to counter Taran's words, but soon realizes, by his tone and the way he conducts the situation, that perhaps all of this is just an excuse to find a reason to kick Gray out of the mansion. Gray apologizes and seriously explains that he has no ulterior motives with his wife, making it clear that it was just an accident. But Taran does not listen to him. He brusquely passes by Gray, bumping his shoulder against his with evident irritation. Taran turns to Lysithea and picks her up in his arms. Taran then turns to Gray, his gaze hard and merciless, and firmly declares that, with or without a horse, he needs to be out of the mansion by tomorrow. Taran begins to carry Lysithea in his arms toward their room, not looking back. Gray remains standing in the hallway in complete silence, just watching. As they move away, Gray suddenly starts to laugh loudly, as if he found the whole situation amusing. Taran shoots a furious glance over his shoulder, while Lysithea is surprised by Gray's unexpected reaction. Still laughing a bit, Gray raises his hands in a gesture of apology and says that it was inappropriate of him to laugh at that moment. Taran and Lysithea look at Gray in confusion, both with puzzled expressions. Gray then looks at Lysithea and, in a mysterious manner, says he is sorry, but that deep down, he really would have liked to have saved her. Lysithea feels confused, sensing that Gray's words carry something more behind the simple apology, but unable to understand exactly what he meant. Gray states seriously that he will leave the next morning and, in a respectful tone, asks that, if it is not too much to ask, they both come to say goodbye to him before his departure. Lysithea shows concern about the fact that Harmony has not returned yet, but Gray reassures her, saying that she will come back, even if he has to call her all night until she shows up. After that, Taran carries her in silence to their room, not exchanging another word along the way. Upon arriving in the room, Taran carefully places her on the bed, and seriously, he expresses his disappointment that she put herself in a risky situation, reminding her that he had been warning her to be more careful with Gray. Angry, Lysithea responds that even if Gray is not entirely trustworthy, it is not right for Taran to expel him like that. Taran counters that he has already made a decision and that it is final. Then, in an authoritative tone, he orders Lysithea to take off her clothes so he can examine her and check if she is hurt. But Lysithea, still irritated, ignores his order and continues arguing, upset with the way he treated Gray and with his ridiculous behavior acting like her husband when he rejected her yesterday. At that moment, Taran kneels by the bed. He begs Lysithea to let him examine her. He confesses that the mere thought of her being hurt drives him crazy, and he needs to make sure she is okay. He gently touches her leg, the touch light and careful. Lysithea blushes immediately, realizing that this gesture is filled with the same intense feeling she felt from his touches the night before. Sad and with a low voice, Lysithea asks him to stop lying to her and pretending that he really cares, as this will only confuse her more. She silently realizes that despite being rejected by him, she cannot help but love him. He looks at her for a moment and reminds her that he is exactly what she thinks of him, a scoundrel. The next morning, Lysithea wakes up and notices that Taran stayed by her side all night, silently taking care of her while she slept. She gets up, determined to take action. Lysithea feels she needs to do something that forces Taran to reveal the feelings he tries to hide at all costs. Something so intense that it makes his feelings overflow in a way that it becomes impossible for him to continue denying. Looking out the mansion window, Lysithea sees, relieved, that fortunately Harmony has returned. Too convenient a strangeness in my humble opinion. And she reminds herself that when Gray leaves, the act of husband and wife should come to an end. She then decides to resume her shooting practice, believing that this way things can gradually return to normal. Taran closely follows the training, observing her every movement and giving firm instructions. Lysithea, for her part, is more serious than usual. When Taran praises her progress, Lysithea responds sarcastically as she places a new bottle on the stone, saying that she might even end up becoming a hunter. But Taran retorts, saying that this is impossible. He explains that no matter how well Lysithea learns to shoot, she does not have the cold blood necessary to pursue this kind of profession. The two end up lightly arguing about the subject, exchanging provocations until, after a sarcastic comment from Taran, Lysithea turns around irritated, quickly aiming at the bottle. Taran is surprised by the accuracy of the shot, but soon becomes annoyed when he realizes that Lysithea used a full bottle, wasting the drink. Lysithea responds that it's not like they were going to drink together anyway, so it's better to use the bottle that way. Taran firmly holds Lysithea's wrist and tells her to stop with the nonsense, saying to end the training. Irritated, Lysithea asks why he is so bothered by it since he doesn't even drink wine. He retorts, saying that he does drink. He was just choosing to save the bottles to drink alone when it's all over. Lysithea sighs irritably upon hearing this and says there's no fun in drinking wine alone. He looks at her with curiosity and asks if all that irritation is because, deep down, she wanted them to drink wine together. Gray clears his throat loudly, interrupting the discussion between the two. He explains that he is already leaving and that he just came to say goodbye before departing. He apologizes for anything he might have done that bothered them both. He then adds that, despite everything, he had a good stay at the mansion. Saying goodbye, Gray mounts his horse and begins to ride away. But Lysithea shouts for him to wait and runs to the horse. Gray stops the horse, curious, as he watches Lysithea approach him, breathless from running. Lysithea, still catching her breath, opens her bag while saying she would like to give him something before he leaves. She then hands a book to Gray. She explains that it is a book about herbs she found in the mansion, and that it might be useful for him. Gray begins to leaf through the book carefully and, with a sincere smile, thanks her for the precious gift. He then extends a small snow globe to Lysithea, saying he would like to give it to her as a gift in return. As Lysithea observes the globe with curiosity, Gray comments that, due to its rounded shape, it might end up rolling around if not placed correctly. She then asks, excited, how she should place it correctly. But Gray, with a more serious and mysterious expression, replies that she doesn't need a base. She can simply leave it free. Lysithea looks at him confused, admitting that she doesn't understand what he meant. Gray then comments that the third floor also has 287 steps from end to end, just like the other floors. He confesses that he thought it would be different, but it wasn't. Lysithea then remembers Gray's search for the truth powder and realizes that was why he was investigating the third floor. Gray admits that, unfortunately, he lacked the courage to find the truth powder, but that she, Lysithea Del Arman, should find this powder at any cost, thus revealing that all this time he knew her true identity. Lysithea is in shock, paralyzed for a moment, unable to hide her surprise. He states that it would be useless for her to try to deny it. The signs were everywhere. With the conversations they had and observing her, he was able to gather enough information to deduce who she was. Even without ever having seen her face, the facts revealed the truth. Worried, she asks if, since he is going to the capital, he intends to report her. Gray states that the contract he had with the revolutionaries has ended and he is only going to deliver the report as requested, but he sees no need to include her in the report. Lysithea is surprised to learn that he works for the revolutionaries. He explains that he spent the last 2 months at the Slivane's port, identifying nobles trying to flee the kingdom using the ships, and the revolutionaries paid him a small fortune for each noble he managed to capture during that time, but he tells her she can rest assured that he does not intend to report her. After all, she was his savior, and seeing how far she managed to survive, he is sure there is still hope for her. Lysithea feels her body tense upon hearing the word hope, especially after what Gray just revealed. The idea gnaws at her inside. If the sea hadn't frozen, she would probably have followed him to the port, and ended up captured by him. Gray then respectfully bids farewell to Lysithea, wishing her good luck and stating that wherever he is, he will be rooting for her. As he rides away, Lysithea watches him distance himself. Taran approaches and asks her what they were talking about, but she says they were discussing an old book on medicinal herbs. While watching Gray move away, Taran states that if the weapon hadn't been with Lysithea, they could at least have managed to get an extra mount. Lysithea asks if he is insinuating that he would shoot Gray. Taran confirms her suspicion. Irritated, Lysithea tightly grips the strap of the rifle strapped to her back. Lysithea quickly pulls out the weapon and raises it, aiming in the direction of Gray, who is still riding away. Taran praises Lysithea's stance, saying she is doing exactly as they practiced in training. It is then that Lysithea cocks the rifle, and Taran is startled, realizing she is really about to shoot. Bang! The sound of the shot echoes loudly across the plains. The gunshot startles Harmony, who begins to ride faster, speeding toward the horizon. Taran had pulled the rifle barrel up at the last moment, causing Lysithea to miss her shot. He still wears a shocked expression, his gaze fixed on her, unable to believe what just happened. The recoil of the weapon catches her by surprise, and the back of the rifle hits her abdomen hard, making her start coughing heavily. Taran, still shaken, raises his voice in anger and disbelief. "What were you thinking? You would have hit him if I hadn't done anything." Really?" she says sarcastically, smiling. She stands up and touches Taran's face, saying, "Don't be so stressed. Did you know you are sweating cold?" He pulls her hand away, clearly irritated by the situation. She then smiles tenderly at him and says that he has been lying to her all this time because, in fact, he cares a lot about her. Taran continues to try to deny it, but Lysithea maintains confidence in her voice. She asserts that if he really didn't care about her, he wouldn't have stopped her from shooting. She knows he could never bear the thought of seeing her kill an innocent man. He immediately retorts, saying she is wrong. Lysithea then stretches her arms and stands in front of Taran with a firm voice, declaring that if he really doesn't care about her, then he should prove it by using the rifle to shoot her. Irritated, he grabs the rifle and begins to position himself. Lysithea simply watches him in silence. She knows he is consumed by anger and that, in the heat of the moment, he will pull the trigger at any moment. He raises the weapon, aiming at her with hatred in his eyes. But amid the tension, she notices his arm trembling slightly, revealing his insecurity. Proof that he doesn't really want to do that. With a pained expression, Taran closes his eyes and pulls the trigger, but the shot does not fire. He is surprised and, at the same time, relieved to realize that the rifle was empty. Confident, Lysithea breaks the silence, saying that she knew the cartridge was empty, but that she had to lie to him. She wanted him to be honest with himself. She wanted to see the expression of despair in his eyes at the thought that he had really shot her. Taran lowers the rifle, still in shock, processing everything that just happened. Lysithea remains confident. She smiles, saying that she was sure he loved her too. After that, they look at each other for a long minute. Taran then grabs Lysithea's wrist. "Come with me," he orders in a low voice, but full of intensity. Upon reaching the room, he opens the door and pushes Lysithea inside. The gesture is a bit rough. Irritated and confused, Lysithea raises her gaze to him, her expression reprimanding him. But before she can say a word, Taran lunges at her, catching her by surprise and covering her mouth with an intense kiss, filled with the fury and confusion that burned inside him. They end up surrendering to each other intensely, very different from the other times. Taran shows himself to be rougher, more brutal, as if each movement were guided by conflicting feelings within him. Desire, anger, need, and vulnerability, all mixed into one act. Even already knowing the answer, Taran asks if she loves him. Lysithea confirms that she does, just as he loves her too. With those words, she flings open the door to his heart, forcing him to be honest with his own feelings. And for the first time, Lysithea witnesses Taran's wild and vulnerable side, the one he always tried to hide from everyone, including himself. The next morning, when Lysithea wakes up, she finds Taran already up, completely dressed. He is standing by the window, motionless. She hurriedly gets up, asking where he is going, and he explains that it has stopped snowing, that he is going to a nearby inn to get a horse for them. He walks towards the door, saying it's better to go while there is still sunlight and that, at the latest, he will be back tomorrow around lunchtime. Taran, "Wait," says Lysithea. "What I said before still stands." He looks at her and asks seriously, "What exactly?" "About us running away together, about living together." Taran picks up his coat and, without looking at Lysithea, turns his back and starts to walk away, limiting himself to saying in a restrained tone that he will keep that in mind. She, worried, just watches him leave, uncertain of what to expect at that moment. While picking up the clothes from the floor and starting to get ready, something slips from her clothes. The small snow globe falls and rolls gently across the floor. She picks up the globe from the ground, relieved that it didn't break. After getting ready, she goes to the window and sees Taran riding away. Lysithea places her hand on the window, her gaze lost on the horizon. She is worried about Taran. She pushes away the thoughts that torment her and decides to occupy her mind with useful things while waiting for Taran. She spends the hours cooking, organizing the house, and even sewing, each task serving as a silent relief for the anxiety she feels. But there isn't much to do in that huge mansion, and soon she becomes bored. She distracts herself by rolling the snow globe under the bed, and while watching the flakes move inside, her mind returns to Gray's words at their farewell, making her reflect uneasily on the true weight of what he meant and why he gave her that globe. She wonders, with a shiver, if, like her, Gray also heard or saw something on the third floor of the mansion. The doubt gnaws at her. Is there really a secret room in the mansion? And is it hidden precisely on the third floor? Lysithea begins to mentally review every word Gray said about the mansion. She reasons with herself. If the 3 floors are exactly the same size inside and out, that would mean there is no extra space, and therefore the existence of a secret room would be impossible, at least in theory. Gray had said with such conviction that everything important was on the 3rd floor, and made it clear that the truth dust would be an extremely valuable item. Why would he say something like that if there was really nothing hidden there? Lysithea suddenly realizes that perhaps Gray was referring to that strange torture room. After all, something like the truth dust could very well have been used there. Determined to discover whatever is hidden there, Lysithea heads to the bizarre room on the 3rd floor. With cautious steps, she proceeds with her gun ready to shoot if necessary. Even if there is a chance that there is nothing there, and that all of this could be paranoia in her head, she places the revolver and the globe on the floor and begins to look more closely at the things in the room. She feels a bit frustrated for not finding anything even after investigating for a while, until she feels something touch her foot. Initially, she is startled, but soon realizes it was the snow globe that bumped into her. As she bends down to pick up the snow globe that had fallen on the living room floor, Lysithea accidentally pushes it. To her surprise, it rolls back in her direction. She notices, intrigued, that the globe is rolling too fast, at an oddly constant speed. This couldn't be explained just by the rounded shape of the object. She places the globe on the floor again, testing and observing it roll. Noticing that the globe always rolls in the same direction, Lysithea concludes that the floor hides a slight incline, something subtle and imperceptible to the naked eye, but that shouldn't be there at all. She decides to leave the room and starts testing the globe at various points on the 3rd floor. She places it on the floor, attentively observing the movement it makes, and notes that at certain points it rolls faster and at others more slowly, but generally always in the same direction, revealing that there is indeed an elevation in the floor. Lysithea realizes that half of the 3rd floor is slightly elevated compared to the rest. She then grabs a medieval mace and starts dragging it down the corridor towards the last room. The globe did not roll on the 1st or 2nd floors. This could only mean that only the 3rd floor is elevated. And since the globe only rolled in the half of the 3rd floor, Lysithea concludes that there must be a hidden secret space between the 2nd and 3rd floors on the east side of the mansion. Reasoning, Lysithea deduces that it should be possible to access the secret room from the last room on the 3rd floor. Determined, Lysithea raises the mace with both hands and, with all the strength she can muster, strikes one of the walls in the corridor near the last room. The crash echoes through the mansion, and fragments of wood scatter across the floor. With firm blows, she manages to open an entrance at the point where the wall gives way more easily. Without hesitation, Lysithea enters through the space she just opened. Lysithea finds a narrow staircase leading to the secret room. She notices fresh footprints marked on the steps, a sign that someone has probably been there recently. She also finds a lantern with a significant amount of oil, confirming that someone has definitely been there recently. A shiver runs down her spine, and Lysithea keeps the revolver steady in her hands while reflecting silently. Could it have been Taran who was here recently? She thinks, but soon concludes that it probably wasn't. Suddenly, she hears a faint scratching coming from the ceiling above the stairs. The sound is subtle, as if someone is dragging themselves, but enough to put her on alert, her fingers tightening around the revolver as her heart races. Brave, our protagonist takes a deep breath, lifts her chin, and decides to climb the steps to check the source of the sound. Upon entering, Lysithea is surprised. The place is much larger than she had imagined. As she steps into the room with her eyes alert, Lysithea accidentally bumps into an object on the floor. She looks down and sees a bag full of some kind of powder or white sand. Could this be the truth powder that Gray spoke of? She thinks. While Lysithea examines the white powder cautiously, a chill runs down her neck as she hears, behind her, a hoarse and weak voice whisper, "Help, please." She grabs the lantern and quickly turns in the direction of the voice to see who is asking for help. A badly injured man is dragging himself across the floor with difficulty. Lysithea is in shock at the scene, wondering why there is a person there and why they are in this state. Noticing the fragility in the voice, Lysithea kneels beside the fallen man. Worried, she asks who he is and if he can get up. With the flickering light of the lantern illuminating the tired face of the man, he raises his eyes to her and, with effort, whispers, "Lysithea." Her heart nearly stops. She steps back a bit, startled, unable to hide her shock. "How does he know my name? Who are you?" she asks, still in shock. "Taran Cardis," the man murmurs with difficulty. Lysithia's heart stops for a second upon hearing that name, as if the ground had just disappeared beneath her feet. "I'm the broker you hired," the man continues, his voice weak and halting. He looks at her, confused. "How are you still alive?" The scene cuts to the next day. In the stable, Taran, or at least the one Lysithia believed to be named Taran, has just arrived. He runs his hand over the horse's coat, taking care of the animal. Lysithia goes to greet him, wrapping him in a warm embrace, pulling him close. With a soft and sincere voice, she says she missed him. She lifts her face to his and gives him a passionate, intense kiss. He responds immediately, as if he too has missed her. He announces that the sea ice has finally melted. Lysithia smiles at the news. After all, it means they can finally leave. Taran agrees, saying that if she wants, they can depart today. A bit more seriously, she asks if he will board the ship with her, but he just looks down at the ground in silence. Deep in thought, Lysithia says they can leave this afternoon, but she would like to eat before they continue their journey. After all, she had promised that she would cook for him, and keeping her promise, she prepared a special meal for him. They enter the mansion, and Lysithia quickly leads them to the dining room, which already has a beautiful meal set up that she had prepared with care. Taran sits at the table looking at the served dishes with a slight smile. He compliments her, saying the food looks delicious, and soon notices the tomato soup, and curiously asks if Lysithia managed to follow the recipe correctly. Lysithia replies that he should try it, and then he would see for himself. He brings the spoon to his mouth, tastes the tomato soup, and savors it in silence for a few moments. With a smile on his face, he says it is delicious, and Lysithia gets excited by the comment. She explains that she had to use everything that was left in the fridge. Taran says it's good to know this because then he can provide supplies for the next ones who come. Intrigued, Lysithia watches him and asks why he is so concerned about the next person who comes. Then she asks, "You aren't coming with me?" He replies that he is, but only to the port of Sylvain, after which she will go on alone. Taran grabs the glass in front of him and takes a big gulp of water, as if he is very thirsty. "You've changed, Taran," she says in a serious tone. "Changed how?" he asks. Lysithia says she feels like he has become a completely different person from when she met him. Intrigued, he asks how she saw him when she met him. Lysithia replies that she saw him as a bad person. "A bad person," he repeats thoughtfully while taking another spoonful of the tomato soup. "Yes," she continues. "You didn't care when I was desperate. You simply turned your back on me." He looks at her, asking when exactly he would have done that. Lysithia remembers the first nights when she couldn't sleep because of the strange noises in the mansion. Taran counters, saying he even invited her to his room back then. "As if I could accept that invitation from someone I couldn't trust." Lysithia retorts, her voice heavy with bitterness. Taran argues that it was still a better option than walking in the middle of a snowstorm at night and being attacked by a wolf. Lysithia sighs and replies that it's not the same because if a wolf attacked her, she would still have the chance to be saved by him. But if it were him attacking her, there would be no one to save her. He looks seriously at her and says he doesn't think a wolf would have attacked her if she had gone to his room that night. Leaning over the table, Lysithia stares at him and asks if he really thinks that. Almost instantly, he replies that he doesn't. She then smiles and comments, "See?" She gets up from the table and returns with a bottle of wine in her hands, placing it in front of him. Then she invites him to drink with her. Lysithia pours a glass of wine for him. Taran watches her with suspicion, finding it strange how much she insists that he drink with her. She explains that she just wanted to fulfill what he himself had said since he mentioned wanting to drink wine on their last day together. Taran furrows his brow, finding her words strange, and retorts that it's still early to call that the last day. After all, they still have 3 days to reach the port. "No," replies Lysithia, and a nearly sickly smile appears on her lips as she looks at him. "This is our last day together." He looks at her seriously, his eyes narrowed with suspicion, and asks in a harsh tone, "And why would it be the last? Did you poison the food?" Lysithia smiles and replies that yes. Taran freezes for a minute, shocked, and asks if she is joking. She just shakes her head silently, denying it. Taran, not taking his eyes off her, grabs the glass and spills the wine on the floor, believing that the poison she mentioned might be there. He looks at her and asks why she is doing this all of a sudden. Out of nowhere, an uncontrollable thirst takes over Taran, forcing him to grab the glass and drink the water in large gulps. Lysithia just watches him in silence, a smile forming on her lips. Lysithia looks at him and asks if she can tell him a funny story, adding that it's one he will probably like. He replies that he doesn't want to hear it, but Lysithia starts telling it anyway, stating that there really was a ghost in the mansion. Lysithia continues, saying that the bet they made was one she could never win. That mansion had been part of his plan from the beginning, and she had already lost the moment she arrived there. He tries to explain, his voice tense, that the ghost story was just a joke and that there is no ghost in that mansion. But Lysithea immediately retorts, saying with conviction that there is. Lysithea is serious, her gaze fixed on him, when she says firmly and without hesitation, "I am looking at him right this moment. Phantom." Taran, or rather, Phantom, looks seriously at her when he hears those words. In silence, he notices the detail that he missed before. Lysithea hadn't eaten the tomato soup, so it was probably there that the poison was. Phantom tries to get up from the chair, but soon realizes that his body isn't responding. His body completely loses strength, and Lysithea stands before him, her expression cold. She calmly explains that what he ingested is not a poison, but rather a substance that paralyzes the body and prevents any lies from escaping his lips. Motionless on the table, he can only stare at her with difficulty. Lysithea approaches, her gaze firm and incisive, and asks the first question in a clear voice. "Are you Phantom?" He is clearly groggy and his voice weak, and he begins to explain everything. He says it all started when he received a commission letter. The mission he received was clear: assassinate Brant, the leader's son. From there, he began to meticulously prepare to fulfill the task, calculating each step carefully, until one day the contractor sent him a generous sum of money along with a message. He had done a good job. He recounts that he was confused. He was being paid as if he had eliminated Brant, but he hadn't completed the job yet. Rumors began to circulate that Phantom had assassinated the leader's son. This irritated him even more, as he didn't want to take credit for a job he hadn't done. It was the first time he had failed a mission, and worse than that, someone had stolen his target. However, more than a matter of personal revenge, he knew he needed to worry about the leader of the revolution, who would surely come after him believing he was responsible for his son's death, even though the real assassin hadn't been him. Until the day he was preparing to flee the kingdom, a new request arrived. The request was to eliminate Lysithea dell'Armani, the youngest daughter of Count Arman, who had lost everything in the revolution. Why did he want to eliminate her specifically? And why choose the man accused of killing his son for this mission? Everything sounded like a possible trap. But as he had no proof of anything, all he could do was speculate. In the end, curiosity spoke louder, and that's what led him to accept the mission. He discovered Lysithea's escape route and arrived early at the meeting point. There, he ambushed Taran Cardis. Then, after defeating Taran Cardis, he simply waited for Lysithea in the mansion, taking his place without raising suspicion. The real Taran was extremely reserved. Few words, and so Phantom had to torture him to extract any information that could help him pass as him in front of Lysithea, including information about Lysithea herself. While looking for a place to hide the real Taran, he ended up finding the truth powder, the same substance that, ironically, Lysithea was using against him at that very moment. And not long after that, Lysithea arrived at the mansion. He was surprised to see her arrive there, safe and sound, something he hadn't expected after everything that had happened. He comments to her that she is so beautiful that, even trying to hide her memorable hair, she still draws attention wherever she goes, especially her eyes, which reminded him of a sky at dusk. But that day were filled with suspicion and fear. Her beauty truly caught him off guard, a type of beauty that was extremely mesmerizing, hard to ignore even for someone like him. He admits that he couldn't help but imagine how it would have been if they had met under different circumstances, and without realizing it, he ended up getting used to, and even liking, when she called him Taran. He enjoyed talking and interacting with her, even if it meant continuing to play the role of Taran. But staying in that mansion was making her paranoid, especially when she heard, night after night, the screams of the real Taran as Phantom extracted more information from him. And upon realizing how much that was disturbing him, he stopped questioning the true Taran. He wanted to see her smile. Moreover, he also wanted to know more about her, as he needed to discover the real reason the revolutionary leader had given him that mission. This was one of the reasons why, on one of the nights at the mansion, he invited her to his room, a way to get closer to her and try to understand her better. But when she declined the invitation, he thought he might be moving too fast and decided to pull back. Until one night, while bringing a basin of water for her to wash, he saw her asleep, softly crying and calling for help in her dreams. He was about to wake her, but when he heard her calling for Taran in her sleep, he decided not to do so. He interpreted that as a sign that, little by little, she was getting closer to him, even without realizing it. But he was mistaken. Instead of getting closer, Lysithea ended up fleeing into the blizzard, overwhelmed by despair. Still driven by curiosity, he decided to follow her. It was then that he found her in danger. being attacked by wolves in the middle of the blizzard. It was at that moment that he was sure that Lysithea was not involved in any kind of trap related to the leader of the revolution. He then decided to save her, and while carrying her in his arms through the snow, he couldn't help but ask himself, why hadn't she come to him instead of risking herself that way? When they reached the cave, her body was so cold that he had no choice but to use his own body to warm her and prevent her from succumbing to the cold. It was there, in the cave, that they connected for the first time. Lysithea, still fragile, told him that she had killed Brant only to defend herself from him. At that moment, all the pieces finally fell into place in Phantom's mind. The leader of the revolution had actually given him the chance to take revenge on the one who had stolen his target, while also asking him to avenge the murder of his own son. But she was so innocent, so pure. She lived in fear that people would judge her for having defended herself, and she carried constant nightmares because of everything that had happened. He then decided to postpone the conclusion of the mission. He wanted to help her with the nightmares, to make her feel free from the weight that haunted her night after night. And surprisingly, even to him, he found himself taking care of her, something he had always deemed himself incapable of doing, genuinely caring for someone in that way. It was as if Lysithea had transformed him into a completely different person, someone he had never imagined he could be. When he found out that bandits had entered the mansion while he was away, his heart tightened immediately. Desperate, he wished with all his might that he had arrived in time to protect her. No matter how much he didn't want her to get involved in that, Lysithea ran into his arms. And the feeling of that embrace, that day, was simply indescribable. It was on that day that a bad thought crossed his mind. He realized he was lying to her, and that no matter how close they were becoming, Lysithea had no idea who he really was. He even thought about telling her the whole truth, abandoning the mission, and simply living by her side. If, of course, Lysithea was willing to accept him as he truly was. But deep down, he knew he was just fooling himself. He was a killer. He had too much blood on his hands, and he had no right to drag Lysithea into a life alongside someone like him. He then realized that his desire to have her by his side was purely selfish, stemming from a need that did not take into account the burden he would place on her. Realizing that he could not escape his own destiny, he decided to be affectionate with her while she was still alive, cherishing every moment by her side before the mission came to an end. Cherishing every moment by her side before the mission came to an end. But he soon realized he was not the only one harboring feelings. The affection and love that Lysithea showed were not directed at Phantom, but at Taran, the man whose place he had taken. This irritated him a bit, and so he would purposely tease her, kissing her suddenly and saying things that made her blush. It was an irrational way to punish her for not seeing Phantom. Meanwhile, he tried to convince himself that, deep down, it was he, Phantom, whom she truly wanted. When she said she loved him, happy, but at the same time, he knew that it was nothing more than a fleeting dream, because a life alongside Phantom would be miserable for her. Even so, every time he held her or kissed her, he felt euphoric, complete, as if all the emptiness inside him disappeared. He fantasized about a life beside her, a life that he knew deep down could never happen. He found himself wondering, what if he gave up being a killer? Could they live happily? Would it be possible to start a new life together? Far from everything. Just him and Lysithea? Lysithea listens to the whole story in silence, maintaining a serious expression. Taran explains that the leader of the revolutionaries has a personal vendetta against her. Even if he spared her, the leader would send other assassins after her until one of them finally completed the job. That's why, initially, he thought it would be best for him to finish the job himself, ensuring it ended quickly instead of letting her suffer from the endless pursuit of other assassins. But when he couldn't shoot Gray because of her, he realized how much Lysithea had truly changed him. He believed he had set limits on himself, and on her, but soon realized he was wrong. When she said she loved him and was willing to sacrifice everything to be with him, Phantom felt the weight of his own barriers crumbling. He felt bad because he knew the man she loved didn't exist. He feared that Lysithea had fallen in love with just a ghost, an illusion created by him. But at that point, they were already so involved that all he could do was try to push her away and hope she would stop loving him. But he didn't want to break her heart. It didn't matter if, in the end, he decided to fulfill the mission or not. He wasn't sure if the feelings he had for her were born from arrogance or if they were truly love. But Lysithea knew exactly what those feelings were. It was at that moment he realized that if he didn't kill her soon, he would end up dead himself. Maybe it was already too late, he says, returning from his memories and reflections. "So you decided to kill me?" asks Lysithea, staring at him firmly. He tries to get up with difficulty, his muscles still heavy, and murmurs that his mind tells him he should do it. Letting out a bitter laugh, marked by the pain etched on his face, he admits, "It seems it's not that easy. When I said I loved you, you must have laughed inside," says Lysithea, her voice heavy with anger. "All this time, I was the only one being sincere," says Lysithea, with a sad expression on her face. Crying, she continues, saying that while she was being sincere, he was just playing a role, and that in the end, it would all end with him killing her. He calls her name and with a choked voice says that on that day when he pulled the trigger, he knew that was his last chance. For he knew that if things continued that way, he would lose himself even more. Besides the immense relief he felt for not having killed her, he also had a revelation. His life as Phantom was over. He realized he could never live as an assassin again. Through tears, Lysithea asks if this is because he couldn't kill her. He realized he could never live as an assassin again. Through tears, Lysithea asks if this is because he couldn't kill her. Looking at her, he replies that it's not because of that, it's because he realized he loves her. "I can't kill her. I would probably postpone it for the rest of my life," he admits, his voice sad. She continues crying intensely upon hearing his words. Between sobs, she understands that what they lived in that mansion was not a lie, not completely. But at the same time, she wonders how much of it was really 100% genuine. Her heart aches, feeling torn, because although it is filled with love for him, it is also overwhelmed by discomfort and a bitter sense of betrayal. She silently wonders if her feelings will become clearer once she can eliminate the dishonest memories. But doubt gnaws at her. Which memories should she eliminate? She wonders if, after all this, it would still be possible to be happy and truly love Phantom. Determined, she tells him that she will forget everything. She wonders if, after all this, it would still be possible to be happy and truly love Phantom. Seeing that she is leaving, he begs her to do him one last favor. He is consumed by a maddening thirst and asks for just a glass of water before she goes. Realizing that he is not in a position to be a threat, she grabs a wine glass for him. As she brings it closer, he comments ironically that, of all the drinks, she chose wine. Since he is very weakened, Lysithea brings the wine to his mouth. At that moment, his eyes shine like those of a predator. He quickly grabs her wrist, making the glass shatter on the floor. Then, he pulls her in for an intense and desperate kiss. She resists and pulls away from him. In a weak voice, he simply asks, "Please don't forget me." Lysithea runs out of the dining room, clearly overwhelmed by everything that has happened. Outside the mansion, we see her riding away from the mansion. Tears stream down her face as she thinks, that was a curse. The curse of the Phantom. And that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. This story was intense, wasn't it? I loved the plot twists and the moments of tension. Even though some things felt a bit rushed, I don't think it's a bad story. But let me know in the comments what you thought. Did you figure out from the beginning that Taran was the Phantom or not? Here's a little spoiler. He goes after her. Now that he has discovered love, he refuses to abandon her. This work is already finished and has a happy ending, so don't worry. In the end, everyone has a warm heart. The name of the work is Winterwolf, and our recap covered up to chapter 31, almost at the end of the first season. Kisses and see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe.